The elevator doors slid open on the 47th floor, and Liam Carter stepped into the darkened executive suite with his toolbox weighing down his shoulder. His phone buzzed again. The third text in 10 minutes from his babysitter asking when he'd be home. He typed back a quick response while crossing the polished marble floor, his work boots squeaking slightly against the pristine surface. The cityscape glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawling beneath him like a constellation of ambition and broken promises. He checked Victoria's text one more time. Lincoln Park address. Need help with shelf. I will owe you. Simple enough. Except when he knocked on the townhouse door 20 minutes later, what greeted him wasn't a pile of IKEA parts. It was the smell of roasted lamb, the clink of expensive crystal, and Victoria Hale standing in a black dress with panic bright in her eyes as she gripped his wrist and whispered, "Just play along," before pulling him inside and announcing to the two impeccably dressed strangers seated in her living room, "Mom, Dad, this is my boyfriend. If you're watching from anywhere in the world tonight, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see just how far this story travels." Now let's dive in. Liam's brain stuttered like a scratched record. Boyfriend? The man seated in the leather armchair didn't stand. He simply tilted his head, ice blue eyes tracking Liam from scuffed boots to the toolbox still hanging from his shoulder. The woman beside him, Victoria's mother presumably, smiled in that way people do when they're deciding whether you're worth their time. Liam Carter, Victoria continued, her fingers tightening around his wrist in what might have looked affectionate to anyone who wasn't paying attention to the small tremor in her hand. He's been wonderfully patient with my schedule. Liam set the toolbox down carefully, buying himself 3 seconds to think. He'd known Victoria Hale for 8 months, ever since she'd been promoted over him to lead the restructuring team at Meridian Capital. She was 28, Ivy League polished, and approximately 10 tax brackets above his pay grade. They were cordial, professional. She occasionally asked him to build furniture because everyone at the office knew he did carpentry on weekends to supplement his income as a single dad. They were not dating. They had never been dating. "Mr. and Mrs. Hale," Liam said, extending his hand because standing there like a stunned fish wasn't going to help either of them. "It's a pleasure." Victoria's father stood then, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of posture that came from decades of boardroom dominance. His handshake was exactly what Liam expected, firm, assessing, brief. "Richard Hale," the man said. His voice carried the smooth authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "And this is my wife, Catherine." Catherine offered her hand as well, her grip lighter but no less evaluative. She wore pearls that probably cost more than Liam's car, and her perfume smelled like something that came in a bottle with a French name he couldn't pronounce. "Please sit," Catherine said, gesturing toward the sofa. "Victoria told us so much about you." No, she didn't, Liam thought, but he sat anyway because Victoria was still holding his wrist, and her pulse was hammering against his fingers. He could feel her fear vibrating through that small point of contact, and something in his chest, some stupid chivalrous instinct he'd never quite managed to kill, made him stay. "We were just about to have dinner," Richard said, settling back into his chair. "I hope you're hungry." "Starving," Liam lied. Victoria finally released his wrist and sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched. She'd positioned herself between him and her parents like a human buffer, and Liam noticed the way her hands folded too neatly in her lap, the way her smile stayed frozen at exactly the right wattage, pleasant but not eager. "So Liam," Catherine began, lifting her wineglass in a gesture that somehow felt like the start of an interrogation. "Victoria mentioned you work together?" "We do," Liam confirmed, grateful for at least one piece of truth to anchor himself to. "Same firm, different departments, but we cross paths." "How convenient," Richard said, and the word convenient landed like a stone in still water. Victoria's knee pressed harder against his, a warning, or maybe a plea. "We actually met through a furniture project," Victoria interjected smoothly. Liam's incredibly skilled with his hands. Catherine's eyebrows rose fractionally. "How industrious." Liam felt heat creep up his neck. "I do carpentry on the side," he said. "Weekends, mostly. Helps pay the bills." Richard leaned forward slightly. "Victoria mentioned you have a child." And there it was, the first real test. Liam had learned over the past 3 years that mentioning his daughter was a litmus test for people. Some softened, others recalculated his worth downward in real time. A daughter, Liam said, meeting Richard's gaze without flinching. Emma, she's 6. Single father? Catherine asked, and her tone gave away nothing. Yes, ma'am. That must be challenging, she said, balancing a career and parenthood alone. It was phrased like sympathy, but Liam heard the subtext. How do you manage to be a suitable partner for our daughter when you're barely managing your own life? It is, Liam admitted, but Emma's worth every challenge. Something flickered in Catherine's expression. Approval, maybe, or at least the absence of immediate dismissal. Richard, however, remained unreadable. What does your family think about your relationship with Victoria? Richard asked. Liam's jaw tightened. My family situation is limited. My parents passed away when I was in college. It's mostly just me and Emma now. I'm sorry to hear that, Catherine said, and this time she sounded almost genuine. Victoria's hand found his under the edge of the sofa cushion, her fingers threading through his in a gesture that looked intimate but felt desperate. Liam squeezed back, a silent promise. I won't bail on you yet. Dinner should be ready, Victoria announced, standing abruptly. Mom, would you help me in the kitchen? Catherine rose gracefully, following her daughter toward the gleaming kitchen, while Liam was left alone with Richard Hale and approximately 7,000 unspoken questions. Richard didn't waste time. How long have you been seeing my daughter? Liam had no idea what Victoria might have told them, so he went vague. A few months. We've been taking things slowly. Slowly, Richard repeated, as if testing the word for weaknesses. Victoria's always been cautious about relationships. I'm surprised she introduced you to us so soon. Yeah, me too, Liam thought. I think we both felt it was the right time. And you're aware of her position at Meridian? I am. But her responsibilities, her future with the firm. I am, Liam said again, forcing his voice to stay level. Richard studied him for a long moment. My daughter is being considered for partner, full equity stake. It's a significant opportunity, and it requires certain commitments. Liam heard the warning beneath the words. Don't be a distraction. Don't be a liability. Don't get in her way. Victoria's worked hard for that, Liam said carefully. She deserves it. Does she? Richard's gaze sharpened. Or is she being handed opportunities because of her last name? It was a trap question. Agree and insult Victoria's competence, disagree and challenge her father's assessment. Liam chose the third option, honesty. I've seen her work, he said. She earns respect because she's smart, thorough, and she doesn't cut corners. Whatever opportunities come her way, she'll make the most of them. Richard's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed by perhaps half a degree. That's a careful answer. It's an honest one. Before Richard could respond, Victoria and Catherine returned carrying plates that looked like they belonged in a culinary magazine. Perfectly seared lamb chops, roasted vegetables arranged with geometric precision, some kind of reduction sauce drizzled artfully across pristine white porcelain. They ate. Conversation flowed in the careful, practiced way of people who'd perfected the art of saying nothing while appearing engaged. Catherine asked about Liam's daughter's school. Richard discussed market trends with the casual authority of someone who'd made his first million before Liam was born. Victoria played the gracious hostess, refilling wine glasses and steering topics away from anything too personal. But beneath the civility, Liam felt the scrutiny like a physical weight. Every bite he took, every word he chose, every time he reached for his water glass, it all felt measured, catalogued, assessed. When Catherine excused herself to take a phone call and Richard stepped onto the balcony to check his messages, Victoria grabbed Liam's arm and hauled him into the pantry. What the hell is going on? Liam hissed the moment the door closed. Victoria's composure cracked. She pressed her palms against her eyes, shoulders trembling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I panicked. Panicked about what? What am I doing here, Victoria? She lowered her hands, and for the first time since he'd known her, Liam saw actual fear in her eyes. Adrian Cross. Senior partner. He's been Positioning himself. Positioning himself for what? For me. She said it like a confession. My father and Adrian have been discussing a merger, personal and professional. Adrian gets my voting shares through marriage, my father gets his protege secured in the family business, and I get locked into a contract that signs away half my autonomy before I even make partner. Liam stared at her. Your father's arranging your marriage? Not arranging, strongly encouraging, expecting. Victoria's voice went brittle. The winter gala is in 6 weeks. Adrian's planning to announce our engagement there. If I don't have a credible alternative by then, my father will assume I'm on board, and the whole thing becomes a done deal. So you dragged me here to be what? Your credible alternative. You're the only person I could think of who wouldn't immediately sell the story to someone for leverage. Her eyes searched his face. You have a daughter. You understand what it's like to have something you'd do anything to protect. I'm trying to protect my future. Liam felt anger and sympathy warring in his chest. You could have asked. Would you have said yes? Probably not. Definitely not. But standing here now, seeing the desperation in her expression, he understood why she hadn't risked it. What happens when they figure out we're lying? He asked. They won't, not if we're careful. Victoria stepped closer. 6 weeks, that's all I need. Show up to a few events, let my parents see us together, give me enough credibility to reject Adrian's proposal without losing everything. And then? Then we stage a breakup. Mutual, amicable. You go back to your life, I go back to mine. Liam shook his head. This is insane. I know. Your father already doesn't think I'm good enough for you. He doesn't think anyone's good enough for me, but he respects competence and honesty, and you just gave him both. Victoria's hand found his shoulder. Please, Liam, I'll make it worth your time. Bonus, promotion, whatever you need. Just help me survive the next 6 weeks. He thought about Emma. About the rent check he'd written last week that had cleared his account by exactly $17. About the leak in the bathroom he couldn't afford to fix yet. About how one unexpected expense could topple his carefully balanced life like a house of cards. He thought about Victoria's hand shaking when she'd introduced him, and the practiced way she'd smiled through dinner like someone who'd learned to perform rather than exist. 6 weeks, he said finally. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. Thank you, But we set ground rules, Liam interrupted. No surprises, no dragging me places without warning, and if this starts affecting my daughter, we're done, immediately. Agreed. And you tell me the truth about what I'm walking into. All of it. Victoria nodded. Adrian's dangerous, not physically, but professionally. He's been positioning himself at Meridian for years, collecting favors, building leverage, making sure the right people owe him the right things. If he sees you as a threat, he'll try to remove you. Remove me how? However he needs to. Discredit you, get you fired, make sure you disappear from my life before you can interfere with his plans. Liam felt cold settle in his stomach. You're asking me to go up against a senior partner at our firm. I'm asking you to stand beside me while I go up against him. There's a difference. Not much of one. The pantry door opened and Richard's voice cut through the small space. Everything all right in here? Victoria's mask snapped back into place so fast it was almost impressive. Just showing Liam where I keep the good coffee. He's particular about his brands. Richard's gaze moved between them, calculating. Your mother and I should be going. Early meeting tomorrow. They said their goodbyes in the foyer, Catherine kissing Victoria's cheek, Richard shaking Liam's hand one more time with that same assessing grip. We'll see you at the charity auction next Saturday, Catherine said to Liam. It wasn't a question. Looking forward to it, Liam lied. When the door finally closed behind them, Victoria sagged against the wall like someone had cut her strings. That went better than I expected, she said. Your bar for better is terrifying. She laughed, a real laugh this time, not the polished version she'd used all night. Thank you, seriously. I know this is insane. You already said that. I was going to say a lot. Liam picked up his toolbox. I need to get home. Emma's with the babysitter, and I'm already later than I said I'd be. Of course. Victoria straightened, smoothing her dress. I'll text you details about next weekend. Yeah. He paused at the door. Victoria? If this blows up in our faces, we're both screwed. You know that, right? She met his eyes, and for just a moment he saw past the fear and the calculation to something rawer underneath. I know, but right now doing nothing guarantees I lose everything. At least this way, I'm fighting. Liam nodded and left before he could change his mind. The drive home took 25 minutes through Chicago's late-night traffic. His apartment was in a neighborhood that real estate agents called emerging, and everyone else called cheap. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled like someone's burnt dinner. But when he opened the door and saw Emma asleep on the couch with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, everything else faded to background noise. How was she? He asked Sarah, the college student who babysat most evenings. Perfect. We did homework, had dinner, watched half a movie before she crashed. Sarah gathered her backpack. Everything okay? You seemed stressed when you texted. Work thing, Liam said, which was technically true. Thanks for staying late. After Sarah left, Liam lifted Emma carefully, carrying her to her bedroom and tucking her under blankets covered in cartoon stars. She stirred slightly, mumbling something about tomorrow's spelling test, and Liam smoothed her hair back from her forehead. Love you, monkey, he whispered. Love you, Daddy, she murmured back, already sliding back into sleep. He stood there for a moment, just watching her breathe, and wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. The next morning arrived too early and too loud. Emma had strong opinions about breakfast, specifically that cereal was boring and she wanted pancakes. Liam negotiated down to frozen waffles, which she accepted with the kind of suspicious grace usually reserved for hostage negotiations. You look tired, Emma announced around a mouthful of waffle. Thanks, kid. You really know how to make a guy feel good. Mrs. Patterson says honesty is important. Mrs. Patterson's right, but maybe save the brutal honesty for after I've had coffee. Emma giggled, syrup glistening on her chin. Liam wiped it away with a napkin, trying not to think about the fact that in a few hours he'd be walking into Meridian Capital and pretending his life hadn't just become exponentially more complicated. The commute was the same as always. Crowded train, overpriced coffee from the cart outside the building, elevator packed with people who smelled like ambition and expensive cologne. But when Liam stepped onto the restructuring floor, everything felt different. Victoria was already at her desk, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Liam's monthly rent. She glanced up when he passed, offering the same professional nod she always did, and he responded in kind. Nothing's changed, her expression said. We're colleagues. That's all. Except everything had changed. Liam settled into his cubicle, firing up his computer and diving into the merger analysis he'd been working on all week. The numbers were clean, the projections solid, but his mind kept drifting to the pantry conversation, to Richard's calculating stare, to the way Victoria's hand had trembled when she'd gripped his wrist. Carter. He looked up to find Marcus Chen leaning against the cubicle wall, coffee in hand and curiosity in his eyes. Marcus worked 2 desks over and had appointed himself office gossip clearinghouse. What's up? Liam asked. You tell me. Word is you were at Victoria's place last night. Liam's blood went cold. Who told you that? Building security mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone else. You know how it goes. Marcus grinned. So what's the deal? You two finally hooking up? We're friends, Liam said carefully. She needed help with furniture. Uh-huh. And I'm sure her parents just happened to be there for moral support. Liam kept his expression neutral. Her parents? Come on, man. Victoria's dad is Richard Hale. You don't think people notice when his car's parked outside his daughter's place? Marcus leaned closer, voice dropping. Just be careful. Office romances are messy, and getting involved with the boss's daughter is career suicide if it goes wrong. Noted, Liam said, turning back to his screen. Marcus lingered for another moment, clearly hoping for more details, but when Liam didn't offer any, he drifted away. 6 weeks, Liam reminded himself. You can survive 6 weeks of this. Except the first crack appeared before lunch. Liam was in the break room refilling his coffee when Adrian Cross walked in. Senior partner, early 40s, with the kind of polished appearance that came from personal trainers and tailored suits. Liam had met him exactly twice. Once at the holiday party, once during a presentation where Adrian had eviscerated someone's analysis with surgical precision. Liam Carter, Adrian said, his voice smooth and utterly devoid of warmth. We haven't spoken much. No, sir. I hear congratulations are in order. Victoria's a catch. Liam's hand tightened around his mug. We're taking things slow. Of course, a smart approach. Adrian stepped closer, and Liam registered the calculated invasion of personal space. Word of advice, though, Victoria's position here is delicate. She's brilliant, but she's also under a microscope. The partnership decision is coming up, and any distractions could impact her prospects. I'm not a distraction. I'm sure you don't mean to be. Adrian's smile didn't reach his eyes. But perception matters in this business. People are already talking about the single dad dating up. Makes for interesting water cooler conversation. Heat flared in Liam's chest. My personal life doesn't affect my work. Maybe not, but it affects hers. Adrian poured himself coffee with deliberate slowness. Just something to consider. You seem like a decent guy, Carter. I'd hate to see you caught in the crossfire when things get complicated. He left before Liam could respond, and the threat hung in the air like smoke. Liam dumped his coffee in the sink, appetite gone. When his phone buzzed an hour later with a text from Victoria. Lunch? My office. Private. He didn't hesitate. Her office was corner suite territory, all glass walls and minimalist furniture. She was standing by the window when he arrived, arms crossed, tension radiating from every line of her body. Adrian knows, she said without preamble. Yeah, he cornered me in the break room. Victoria turned and Liam saw something he hadn't expected. Fury. What did he say? That I'm a distraction, that people are talking, that I should reconsider before things get complicated. Son of a bitch, Victoria's jaw clenched. He's moving faster than I thought. What does that mean? She pulled out her phone, tapping through screens before handing it to him. It was an email chain, internal, marked confidential. Liam skimmed the contents and felt his stomach drop. Partnership review expedited to next month. Candidate assessment includes personal stability and long-term commitment to firm values. He's accelerating the timeline, Victoria said. If the partnership decision happens before the gala, he can frame my relationship with you as evidence of instability, dating a colleague, rushing into things, poor judgment. Can he actually do that? He's senior partner. He can do whatever he wants as long as he sells it correctly. Victoria took her phone back. We need to change strategy. To what? We go public, fully. No more hiding, no more careful distance at the office. We need to look so stable, so committed, that Adrian can't spin it as reckless. Liam felt panic claw at his throat. Victoria, sir. I know this isn't what you signed up for. She met his eyes. But if we don't sell this completely, Adrian will tear us both apart and win anyway. And if we do sell it completely, what then? Then maybe, just maybe, we survive long enough for me to make partner on my own terms, without Adrian's strings attached. Liam thought about Emma again, about stability, about the careful balance he'd built that was already starting to tilt. He thought about Victoria's shaking hand and Adrian's cold smile. He thought about the way his parents had always taught him to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Okay, he said quietly. We do this right, full commitment. But if it starts affecting Emma, it won't, I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep. Victoria's expression softened. Then I promise I'll do everything I can to protect your daughter from the fallout. Deal? Liam extended his hand, and they shook like business partners sealing a contract, which, he supposed, was exactly what they were. The charity auction was Saturday night at the Drake Hotel. Black ties, champagne, and enough old money to fund a small country. Liam stood in front of his bathroom mirror, struggling with a bow tie he'd borrowed from Marcus, and wondering how his life had become a romantic comedy he definitely hadn't auditioned for. His phone rang. Victoria. Please tell me you know how to tie a bow tie, she said without greeting. I'm currently losing a fight with one, so no. YouTube it. I'll send a car in 30 minutes. I have a car. Not for this event, you don't. Trust me. The car turned out to be a town car with a driver who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad. Liam climbed in feeling absurdly underdressed despite the tuxedo and tried not to calculate how much this ride was costing. Victoria was waiting in the Drake's lobby, and Liam's brain short-circuited slightly when he saw her. The dress was midnight blue, fitted perfectly, with her hair swept up in a way that made her look like someone who belonged in this world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. "You clean up nice," she said, adjusting his finally successful bow tie with quick, efficient fingers. "You too," Liam managed. She linked her arm through his. "Ready?" "Not even a little." "Good. Fake it anyway." The ballroom was exactly as oppressive as Liam had imagined. Circular tables draped in white linen, centerpieces that probably cost more than his kitchen renovation fund, and people glittering with jewelry that could pay off his student loans twice over. Richard and Catherine were already seated at a prominent table near the front. Richard's expression when he spotted them was carefully neutral, but Catherine's smile seemed almost genuine. "Liam," she said warmly, rising to kiss his cheek, "you look wonderful." "Thank you, Mrs. Hale." "Catherine, please." They sat, and Liam found himself next to an older gentleman who introduced himself as Harold Pemberton, board member at some investment firm Liam vaguely recognized. Harold immediately launched into a discussion about market volatility that Liam could actually contribute to, thanks to his work in restructuring. Across the table, Victoria was engaged in conversation with a woman in diamonds, but Liam caught the small smile that crossed her face when Harold laughed at something Liam said. The auction itself was surreal. People casually bidding thousands on weekend getaways and art pieces, while Liam tried to look comfortable and not mentally calculate how many months of Emma's college fund each item represented. But halfway through, everything shifted. Adrian Cross appeared at their table, impeccable in his tuxedo, with a blonde woman on his arm who looked like she'd been ordered from a catalog labeled Trophy Date. "Richard, Catherine," Adrian said smoothly, "mind if we join you?" It wasn't really a question. Adrian took the seat directly across from Victoria, and his date, Melissa, something, Liam didn't catch the last name, settled beside him with a practiced smile. "Victoria," Adrian said, "you look radiant, and this must be the famous Liam Carter." "We've met," Liam said evenly. "Of course. Forgive me." Adrian's attention shifted to Richard. "I was hoping to steal a moment later to discuss the partnership timeline. Some exciting developments." "I'm sure they can wait until Monday," Richard replied, but there was interest in his tone, naturally. Though given Victoria's current situation, I thought it might be worth addressing sooner rather than later. The word situation hung in the air like a blade. Victoria's hand found Liam's under the table, her grip tight. He squeezed back, a silent message. "I'm here." "Liam," Adrian continued, turning his attention with predatory focus. "Victoria mentioned you're quite skilled with carpentry, a real artisan." "I do what I can." "Admirable. Though I imagine it's challenging to maintain such hobbies while juggling a demanding career in single parenthood." Liam felt Victoria stiffen beside him. He kept his voice calm. "Emma's my priority. Everything else fits around her." "Of course. Family first." Adrian smiled. "Though one wonders how sustainable that model is long-term, especially if your circumstances change. Relationships require time and attention, too." "We manage," Victoria cut in, her voice sharp. "I'm sure you do." Adrian raised his wine glass in a mock toast. "To managing," Catherine cleared her throat delicately. "Adrian, how is the Whitmore merger progressing?" The conversation shifted, but Liam felt Adrian's attention like a weight for the rest of the dinner. When the auction finally ended and people began filtering toward the bar, Victoria excused them both and pulled Liam into a quiet corridor off the main ballroom. "He's escalating," she said, voice low and fierce. "Did you hear him? Current situation. Challenging to maintain. He's planting seeds." "I noticed." "We need to be smarter, more visible, more—" "Victoria." Liam caught her shoulders gently. "Breathe." She did, her chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. "I'm sorry, I'm just panicking. I know, but we can't let him see that." Liam glanced back toward the ballroom. "What would make Adrian most uncomfortable right now?" "I don't—" Victoria paused. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we stop reacting and start controlling the narrative." Liam straightened his bow tie. "Come on." He led her back into the ballroom, past the bar where Adrian was holding court with several board members, and directly to the small orchestra that had been providing background music all evening. "Can you take requests?" Liam asked the conductor. The man raised an eyebrow but nodded. Liam whispered something, passed him a $20 bill he probably shouldn't have spent, and then turned to Victoria. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Something Adrian won't expect. The orchestra shifted into a slower number, something Liam vaguely recognized from a movie Emma had made him watch last month. He offered Victoria his hand. "May I?" She stared at him for half a second before understanding dawned, and then she smiled, a real smile, bright and almost reckless. "You may." They moved onto the dance floor, and Liam was acutely aware of every eye turning toward them. He'd learned to dance in high school, dragged to lessons by a girlfriend who'd insisted it was romantic. He'd hated it then, but right now, with Victoria's hand in his and Adrian watching from across the room, he was grateful for every awkward lesson. "You're full of surprises," Victoria murmured as they swayed. "I contain multitudes." She laughed, and some of the tension finally left her shoulders. "Thank you for this, for all of it. Thank me when we survive the next 6 weeks. 4 weeks now." "Right. That makes it so much better." They danced through the whole song, and when it ended, scattered applause rippled through the room. Catherine was beaming. Richard looked contemplative, and Adrian's expression had gone carefully blank. Liam leaned close to Victoria's ear. "How'd I do?" "Perfectly," she whispered back. "Absolutely perfectly." But as they left the dance floor and returned to their table, Liam caught Adrian's gaze across the room, and the message there was crystal clear. This isn't over. The Monday after the auction arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. Liam was at his desk by 7:30, coffee going cold beside his keyboard, as he worked through projections for a healthcare merger that had been his main assignment for the past month. The numbers weren't cooperating. Revenue streams looked shakier than the client had initially disclosed, and Liam was 3 layers deep into subsidiary financial statements when Marcus appeared at his cubicle wall. "You're trending," Marcus announced, shoving his phone in Liam's face. The screen showed a photo from Saturday night, Liam and Victoria on the dance floor, her dress catching the light, his hand at her waist, both of them smiling like people who actually belonged together. The caption read, "Meridian Capital's rising star Victoria Hale and Mystery Man heat up charity gala." "Mystery Man," Liam repeated flatly. "That's what they're going with? Better than single dad punching above his weight, which is what Karen from accounting called you." Marcus pocketed his phone. "Seriously, though, you two looked good. Almost convinced me you're the real deal." "Thanks, I think." "Word of advice? Adrian's been in meetings all morning with Partnership Review Committee members. Whatever you and Victoria are doing, it's got his attention." Liam's stomach tightened. "What kind of attention?" "The kind where he's suddenly very interested in employee conduct policies and relationship disclosure requirements." Marcus lowered his voice. "Watch your back, man. Adrian doesn't lose gracefully." After Marcus left, Liam tried to refocus on the merger analysis, but his concentration was shot. He pulled up the employee handbook section on workplace relationships. Everything was technically above board as long as there was no direct reporting relationship, which there wasn't. Victoria was in leadership, but she wasn't his supervisor. Still, the rules felt suddenly flimsy against whatever Adrian might be planning. His phone buzzed. "Victoria." "My office." "Now." She was pacing when he arrived, her office door already closed, blinds drawn against the curious eyes from the bullpen. The professional veneer she usually maintained was cracking at the edges. "Adrian filed a formal inquiry," she said without preamble. "He's claiming our relationship constitutes a conflict of interest because I have influence over departmental resource allocation, which could indirectly benefit you." "That's insane. You don't control my projects." "I know that, you know that, but Adrian's framing it as potential favoritism, and he's got enough political capital to make the partnership committee take it seriously." Victoria stopped pacing, pressing her palms against her desk. "They're requiring us to submit to a workplace relationship review. HR interview, disclosure forms, the whole thing." Liam felt the ground shift beneath him. "What happens in those interviews?" "They ask about the nature of the relationship, timeline, whether there's been any exchange of preferential treatment. It's designed to protect the firm from liability. She met his eyes. And if we give conflicting answers about basic facts, it raises red flags. So we need to get our story straight, down to the smallest detail. Victoria pulled out her laptop, opening a blank document. When did we start dating? 3 months ago, Liam said, picking a timeline that felt safe. After you asked me to build that bookshelf for your office. Good, that's documented. There's an email thread. How did it transition from professional to personal? You invited me for coffee to say thank you. We talked, found common ground, started meeting outside of work. Victoria typed rapidly. First official date? That Italian place in River North. The one with the terrible acoustics but good wine. I've never been there. Then we should probably go this week so we know what we're talking about. Liam leaned against the desk. What about Emma? They'll ask about her. Victoria's fingers paused on the keyboard. What do you want to say? The truth works best that you've met her a few times. We've kept things casual around her because I'm protective of who she spends time with. It makes sense, and it's not checkable. Okay. And your intentions? They might ask if this is serious. Liam considered the question, feeling the weight of the lie they were building brick by careful brick. We say we're taking it one day at a time. Serious enough to be public about it, but we're not rushing into anything. That tracks with what I told my parents. Victoria saved the document, then looked up at him. I'm sorry this is getting so complicated. You've apologized about 6 times already. Stop apologizing and tell me what else Adrian might throw at us. She closed the laptop. He's going to dig into your background. Financial records, custody arrangements for Emma, anything that could paint you as unstable or opportunistic. My finances are a mess, but they're an honest mess. And Emma's custody is straightforward. Her mother gave up parental rights when she was 6 months old. There's nothing to hide there. What about your performance reviews? Any write-ups, complaints, conflicts with supervisors? Clean record. I keep my head down and do my work. Victoria nodded slowly. Then we might be okay. If we stay consistent, if we don't give him ammunition. Her office door opened without warning. Adrian stood in the doorway, impeccable as always, with an expression of practiced concern. Victoria, Liam, I'm glad I caught you both. He stepped inside without invitation, closing the door behind him. I wanted to apologize if my inquiry caused any distress. It's purely procedural, you understand. Of course, Victoria said, her voice cool and professional. We appreciate the firm's commitment to proper protocols. Exactly. Proper protocols. Adrian's gaze shifted to Liam. I also wanted to extend an olive branch. This doesn't have to be adversarial. If you're both forthcoming with HR, I'm sure we can resolve this quickly and move forward. We intend to be completely transparent, Liam said. Wonderful. Though I should mention, and please don't take this as a threat, just friendly advice, the review process can be quite invasive. They'll want to verify timelines, cross-reference statements, possibly even interview character witnesses. Adrian smiled without warmth. I'd hate for any inconsistencies to emerge that might complicate Victoria's partnership consideration. Victoria's jaw tightened. Are you threatening us, Adrian? Threatening? Not at all. I'm simply encouraging honesty. After all, if your relationship is genuine, you have nothing to worry about. He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. Oh, and Liam, HR will likely want to understand your financial situation. Standard practice when there's a significant income disparity in workplace relationships. Wouldn't want anyone to think there were ulterior motives. He left before either of them could respond. Victoria sank into her chair. He knows. He suspects there's a difference. Not much of one. She looked up at Liam, and for the first time since this whole charade began, he saw real fear break through her composure. What if we can't pull this off? Liam thought about Emma, about the careful stability he'd built for her, about how quickly it could all collapse if this went wrong. But he also thought about the way Victoria's hand had shaken when she'd introduced him to her parents, and the desperation in her voice when she'd asked for help. Then we go down swinging, he said, but we're not there yet. The HR interview was scheduled for Friday. Liam spent the intervening days memorizing details of their fabricated relationship with the same focus he'd applied to studying for the CPA exam. Coffee preferences. Victoria took hers black with 1 sugar. Favorite restaurant, that Italian place they still needed to actually visit. How often they saw each other outside work. Twice a week? Usually Tuesdays and Saturdays when Emma was with her regular babysitter. On Wednesday evening, Victoria showed up at his apartment unannounced. Liam opened the door to find her standing in jeans and a sweater instead of her usual tailored suits, looking somehow both more and less like herself. "We need to make this believable," she said. "That means I should actually know what your life looks like." Emma peered around Liam's legs, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Who's that, Daddy?" "This is Victoria. She's a friend from work." Liam stepped aside to let Victoria in, acutely aware of the worn furniture and the stack of Emma's art projects covering the kitchen table. "Victoria, this is Emma." "Hi, Emma." Victoria crouched down to Emma's eye level, and something in her expression softened. "Your dad talks about you all the time." "Really?" Emma looked delighted. "What does he say?" "That you're very smart and you love dinosaurs." "I do love dinosaurs. Do you know about the Spinosaurus?" And just like that, Emma was off, dragging Victoria toward the living room to show her the dinosaur encyclopedia Liam had bought at a used bookstore last month. Liam followed, watching as Victoria settled onto the couch and listened with what appeared to be genuine interest while Emma explained the difference between carnivores and herbivores. "Emma," Liam interrupted gently after 10 minutes. "It's almost bedtime. Go brush your teeth." "But Daddy—" "Teeth first. Then you can show Victoria your dinosaur drawings." Emma scampered off, and Victoria looked up at Liam with an expression he couldn't quite read. "She's wonderful," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah, she is." Liam sat in the armchair across from her. "Sorry about the interrogation. She doesn't meet a lot of my coworkers." "Because you keep work and home separate." "Because most of my coworkers don't care about dinosaurs." He paused. "You didn't have to do this. Come here, I mean." "Yes, I did. If HR interviews Emma, they won't. She's 6. But if my babysitter mentions you, or if somehow this gets back to Emma's school—" Liam ran a hand through his hair. "I need her to know you're just a friend, someone Daddy works with sometimes. Not a fake girlfriend who's using her dad to escape an arranged marriage." Victoria's smile was rueful. "I understand, and for what it's worth, I'll be careful around her." Emma returned with clean teeth and an armful of drawings. She spread them across the coffee table with the confidence of someone displaying priceless art. "This one's a T-Rex," she announced, pointing to a crayon rendering that was enthusiastically, if not anatomically, accurate. "And this one's a Triceratops. They were enemies." "Were they?" Victoria asked, leaning forward to examine the drawings. "Uh-huh. But I think maybe they could have been friends if they tried." "That's a very wise observation." Emma beamed, then yawned hugely. Liam scooped her up before she could launch into another dinosaur lecture. "Bed, monkey, for real this time." "Can Victoria come back?" Emma asked as Liam carried her toward her bedroom. "Maybe, if she wants to." "I want to," Victoria called after them, and the honesty in her voice made Liam pause in the hallway. After Emma was tucked in with her stuffed rabbit and a promise that yes, they could go to the Natural History Museum soon, Liam returned to find Victoria studying the photos on his refrigerator. Emma's school picture. Emma on her 5th birthday, covered in frosting. Emma's mother, just one photo, small and tucked in the corner, because Emma deserved to know what she looked like even if she'd never really known her. "Her mother left when she was 6 months old," Liam said, answering the unasked question. "Postpartum depression that spiraled into something worse. She signed away custody and moved to Oregon. We haven't heard from her since." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Emma's better off." He grabbed 2 beers from the fridge, offering one to Victoria. "You want to tell me the real reason you came here tonight?" Victoria accepted the beer, twisting off the cap. "I wanted to see what I was asking you to risk. This." She gestured around the apartment. "Your life with Emma. I needed to understand what happens if I mess this up." "You're not going to mess it up." "You don't know that." "No," Liam admitted. "But I know that if we're going to survive Adrian, we need to stop second-guessing ourselves and commit to the story." Victoria took a long drink, then set the bottle down with more force than necessary. "HR wants financial records. 3 years of tax returns, bank statements, credit reports. Adrian's pushing the narrative that you're with me for money or career advancement, and they want documentation to disprove it. Then we give it to them. My finances are a disaster, but they're my disaster. Nothing in there suggests I'm trying to gold dig my way up the corporate ladder. What if they see it differently? Then we deal with it. Liam met her eyes. Victoria, you need to trust that I'm not going to fall apart under pressure. I've been managing tight budgets and impossible situations since Emma was born. HR doesn't scare me. She studied him for a long moment. You really mean that? Yeah, I do. Something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of something she'd been searching for and finally found. Okay, then let's give them everything and let the chips fall. Thursday passed in a blur of preparation. Liam submitted his financial records to HR, each document a small humiliation as they laid bare exactly how close to the edge he'd been living. Student loans from a degree he'd never finished. Credit card debt from Emma's medical emergency 2 years ago. The laughably small savings account that never seemed to grow no matter how carefully he budgeted. But woven through it all was a consistent pattern of responsibility. Every bill paid on time or negotiated when it couldn't be. Every expense carefully tracked. Every dollar accounted for. If Adrian was looking for evidence of opportunism or recklessness, he wouldn't find it. Friday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. The HR office was on the 18th floor, decorated in soothing neutrals that did nothing to calm Liam's nerves. He sat in the waiting area, leg bouncing with anxious energy, until a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor called his name. Mr. Carter, I'm Jennifer Walsh, head of HR. Thank you for coming. The interview room was small, windowless, with a table and 3 chairs. Jennifer sat across from him, a thick folder already open in front of her. This is purely standard procedure, she began. When workplace relationships are disclosed, or discovered, we conduct reviews to ensure there are no conflicts of interest or policy violations. I'll ask you some questions, you answer honestly, and we move forward. Simple as that. Understood. Let's start with basics. How did you and Victoria Hale begin your relationship? Liam recited the story they'd practiced, keeping his voice steady and his details consistent. The bookshelf request, the coffee invitation, the gradual transition from colleagues to something more. Jennifer made notes, her expression neutral. And when did this relationship become romantic in nature? About 3 months ago, early September. Can you describe the nature of your current relationship? We're dating, seeing each other regularly, getting to know each other. Has Ms. Hale ever given you preferential treatment in your work assignments or evaluations? No, we barely interact professionally. Our departments overlap occasionally, but she doesn't supervise my work or influence my projects. Have you ever discussed confidential company information with Ms. Hale outside of appropriate professional contexts? No. Have you received any financial assistance or gifts of significant value from Ms. Hale? The question landed like a punch. Liam kept his expression carefully neutral. No. We split expenses when we go out, or we alternate who pays. She's never given me money. While Jennifer consulted her folder. Your financial records show significant debt and limited savings. Has your relationship with Ms. Hale improved your financial situation in any way? My financial situation is what it is. Victoria hasn't changed that. Liam leaned forward slightly. Look, I know what this looks like. Guy struggling to make ends meet starts dating his boss's daughter, but I'm with Victoria because I like her, not because I'm trying to climb some corporate ladder or get access to her money. And you understand that Ms. Hale's position here makes this relationship particularly sensitive? I do. Which is why we've been careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, and why we disclosed the relationship as soon as it became serious. Jennifer made another note. Tell me about your daughter, Emma, correct? Liam's protective instincts flared. What about her? How has your relationship with Ms. Hale affected your parenting responsibilities? It hasn't. Emma's my priority. Victoria understands that, and she respects it. Has Ms. Hale met your daughter? A few times. Briefly. I don't introduce Emma to people I'm dating unless I'm sure it's going somewhere serious. And is it? Going somewhere serious? Liam thought about Victoria's hand shaking when she'd introduced him to her parents, about the fear in her eyes when she'd talked about Adrian, about the way she'd crouched down to Emma's level and listened to a 6-year-old explain dinosaurs like it was the most important conversation in the world. "I think it could be," he said, and was surprised to realize he wasn't entirely lying. Jennifer's questions continued for another 20 minutes, probing, thorough, designed to catch inconsistencies or reveal ulterior motives. But Liam had spent 3 years navigating social services interviews and custody evaluations, answering invasive questions about his fitness as a parent while maintaining his composure. This was different in content, but not in kind. When Jennifer finally closed her folder, Liam allowed himself a small breath of relief. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Carter. I'll be interviewing Ms. Hale separately, and then I'll compile my findings for the Partnership Review Committee. You should have a decision within 2 weeks. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you and Ms. Hale continue to maintain professional boundaries at work. No preferential treatment, no appearance of impropriety. Understood?" "Understood." Liam left the HR office feeling like he'd just survived a deposition. His phone buzzed the moment he stepped into the hallway. "Victoria." "How did it go?" "Survived. Your turn." "Heading in now. Meet me after?" "Italian place." 1 hour. Time to make that alibi real. The restaurant was exactly as Liam had described it. Cramped tables, walls that seemed designed to amplify every conversation, and a wine list that leaned heavily toward overpriced reds. He arrived first, claiming a corner table, and was halfway through a glass of water when Victoria appeared. She looked exhausted, the careful composure she usually wore like armor visibly fraying at the edges. She slid into the seat across from him without a word, and Liam pushed his water glass toward her. "That bad?" She drank half the water before answering. "Jennifer asked if we were sexually intimate." Liam choked on air. "What?" "She said it was relevant to determining the seriousness of the relationship. I told her that was none of the firm's business, and she said refusing to answer could be interpreted as evasive." Victoria's fingers tightened around the glass. "So I told her yes, that we were, because saying no would have made it sound like we weren't really committed." "Did I say yes to the same question?" "She didn't ask you." "No, she asked about financial assistance and whether you'd influenced my career." Victoria closed her eyes. "We should have prepared for that." "Hey." Liam reached across the table, covering her hand with his. It was the first time he'd initiated contact, and her eyes snapped open in surprise. "We got through it. Whatever inconsistencies there are, we explained them away as HR asking different questions. It's fine." "Is it?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Because I feel like we're building a house of cards in a windstorm, and Adrian's waiting with a fan." The waiter appeared before Liam could respond, cheerfully oblivious to the tension as he rattled off specials. They ordered almost at random: pasta for him, risotto for her, a bottle of wine they probably shouldn't afford but desperately needed. When the waiter left, Victoria pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "I keep thinking about what happens when this falls apart. When someone catches us in a lie, or Emma asks the wrong question, or my parents figure out we're not who we're pretending to be. Then we deal with it." "How? How do we deal with Adrian destroying your career and my partnership chances, and possibly your custody of Emma if this gets ugly enough?" Liam felt anger flare in his chest. "He can't touch Emma. That's a line he can't cross. You don't know what Adrian can do. He spent years building leverage, collecting favors, making sure the right people owe him the right things. If he wants you gone, he'll find a way to make it happen, and he'll make it look justified. So what's your alternative? Give up? Walk away and let him win? Maybe that's the smart play. Cut our losses before what? Before you lose your autonomy completely? Before you get locked into a marriage you don't want with a man who's already threatening people?" Liam leaned forward, voice low and intense. "You asked me for help because you wanted to fight. So, fight. Stop looking for the exit and start looking for the opening." Victoria stared at him, something fierce and fragile warring in her expression. "What opening? We're playing defense, reacting to everything Adrian throws at us. How do we turn this around? We stop playing his game and start playing ours." "What does that even mean?" The wine arrived, and Liam waited until the waiter poured and retreated before answering. It means we go on offense. Adrian's been so focused on attacking our relationship that he's exposed himself. That conversation in your office, the HR inquiry that reeks of personal vendetta. He's not acting like a concerned senior partner. He's acting like someone with something to lose. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You think he's vulnerable? I think he's not as untouchable as he wants us to believe. And I think if we dig carefully enough, we might find cracks. Digging into Adrian is dangerous. If he catches us, then we make sure he doesn't catch us. Liam took a sip of wine, his mind already working through possibilities. You said he's been positioning himself at Meridian for years. That takes planning, documentation, meetings that might not all be above board. What if there's something in his history that doesn't hold up to scrutiny? Like what? I don't know yet. But you have access to project files, budget allocations, client communications, things a restructuring analyst might legitimately need to review for pattern recognition or comparative analysis. Victoria's expression shifted from despair to calculation. You want to audit Adrian's deals. I want to understand his operating pattern. If there's nothing there, we haven't lost anything. But if there is, Liam let the implication hang. That's incredibly risky. So is doing nothing. She studied him for a long moment, and Liam saw the exact second she made her decision. The fear didn't disappear from her eyes, but it transmuted into something sharper, something dangerous. Okay, she said quietly. Let's find out what Adrian's been hiding. They spent the rest of dinner planning in low voices, mapping out which files Liam could access legitimately, which databases Victoria could pull reports from without raising flags. By the time their pasta arrived, they had the skeleton of a strategy, careful, methodical, designed to look like routine analysis rather than targeted investigation. We'll need to be smart about this, Victoria said, twirling risotto onto her fork. Document everything. Make sure there's a legitimate work justification for every file we access. Agreed. And we keep this between us, Sakyad. No paper trail, no emails that could surface later. What about your work on the healthcare merger? Can you use that as cover? Liam nodded slowly. The client's been cagey about their subsidiary relationships. I could justify pulling comparable deal structures to verify their claims. If some of those comparables happen to be Adrian's deals, he shrugged, due diligence. That works. I can feed you project codes through normal channels, make it look like standard resource sharing. They continued refining the plan through the main course and into dessert. Tiramisu they split because neither could finish a full portion alone. The restaurant gradually emptied around them, conversations fading into comfortable silence until they were among the last patrons still lingering. We should probably go, Victoria said finally, glancing at her watch. It's past 10. Liam signaled for the check, and when it arrived, Victoria reached for it automatically. He caught her wrist gently. We split it, remember? That's what we told HR. She smiled, tired but genuine. Right, consistency. Outside, the Chicago night was cool and sharp, the city lights reflecting off glass and steel. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, neither quite ready to separate. Thank you, Victoria said, for dinner, for not giving up on this insane plan, for... She gestured vaguely. All of it. Thank me when we win. When we win, she echoed, and for the first time since this whole charade began, she sounded like she actually believed it might be possible. Liam's phone buzzed. Sarah, his babysitter. Emma's asking for you. All good, but she wants to say goodnight. I need to get home, he said. Of course. Tell Emma I said hi. He hailed a cab, and just before climbing in, turned back. Victoria? That question Jennifer asked you, about whether we were intimate. She tensed. Yeah? Next time someone asks something like that, we check in with each other first before answering. No more assumptions. Deal. She paused. For the record, what would you have said? Liam considered the question, thinking about the careful line they were walking between fiction and reality. I would have said that was none of their business either, but if pressed, I would have said yes, because no one commits this hard to a relationship that's purely platonic. Smart answer. I have my moments. He climbed into the cab, rolling down the window. See you Monday. See you Monday. The cab pulled away and Liam watched through the rear window as Victoria stood on the sidewalk, illuminated by streetlights and storefront glow, looking smaller and more alone than he'd ever seen her. When he got home, Emma was already asleep despite Sarah's text, curled up in her bed with her dinosaur encyclopedia open beside her. Liam moved the book carefully, marked her place with a scrap of paper, and tucked the blankets around her small form. "What are you getting us into?" he whispered to the sleeping child, though the question was really directed at himself. Emma stirred slightly, mumbling something about velociraptors, and Liam smoothed her hair back from her forehead. He thought about Victoria's question in the restaurant. What happens when this falls apart? The answer was simple and terrifying. He'd lose the fragile stability he'd built, the carefully balanced life that kept Emma safe and provided for. Adrian would make sure Liam's career at Meridian ended, and the stain of a workplace scandal would follow him wherever he went next. But the alternative, walking away and letting Victoria face Adrian alone, felt like a different kind of failure, the kind that would make him someone he didn't want Emma to grow up knowing. So he'd take the risk. He'd dig into Adrian's history and hope they found something useful before Adrian found them. And maybe, somewhere in the careful space between the lies they were telling and the truth they were building, they'd find a way to survive this. His phone buzzed one more time. "Victoria, thank you for tonight, for believing we could fight." Liam typed back, "Thank you for giving me a reason to." He hit send before he could overthink it, then set his phone aside and settled into the uncomfortable armchair beside Emma's bed. Tomorrow they'd start investigating Adrian's deals, carefully pulling threads to see what unraveled. Tomorrow the risk would escalate, the stakes would rise, and the careful fiction they'd constructed would face its first real test. But tonight, watching his daughter sleep peacefully, Liam allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The following Monday, Liam arrived at Meridian Capital with a strategy and a knot of anxiety sitting heavy in his gut. The healthcare merger analysis gave him legitimate cover to pull comparable deal structures, and Victoria had already seeded the request through official channels, a routine email asking restructuring to review historical transaction patterns for validation purposes. On paper, it was completely innocent. In practice, Liam was about to dig through 3 years of Adrian Cross's deal history, looking for anything that didn't add up. He started with the Whitmore merger Victoria had mentioned at the auction, a mid-sized pharmaceutical acquisition Adrian had shepherded 18 months ago. The public filings were clean, standard structure, reasonable valuation multiples. But when Liam pulled the internal memos and board presentations, small inconsistencies began to emerge. The initial valuation had been $17 million. The final purchase price was $22 million. The $5 million increase was attributed to additional due diligence findings and market condition adjustments, but the timeline didn't support it. The price jump happened in a 2-week window with no corresponding change in Whitmore's fundamentals. Liam made notes, careful to document everything in the context of his healthcare analysis. Valuation inflation could mean a dozen things, most of them legitimate, but it was a thread, and threads could unravel if pulled carefully enough. His phone buzzed. Marcus leaning over the cubicle wall with his usual ill-timed curiosity. "What are you working on that's got you looking like you're defusing a bomb?" Liam minimized the screen reflexively. "Healthcare merger. Clients' financials are messier than advertised." "Aren't they always?" Marcus glanced at the closed file. "Hey, random question. You hear anything about Adrian pulling strings with the partnership committee?" Liam's attention sharpened. "What kind of strings?" Karen said she overheard him in the conference room talking about leadership stability and protecting the firm's reputation. Could be nothing, but combined with the HR thing. Marcus shrugged. "Just thought you should know." After Marcus left, Liam reopened the Whitmore file and dove deeper. The additional $5 million had been allocated as a goodwill adjustment, which was accounting speak for intangible value that couldn't be easily quantified. But the board memo justifying it referenced meetings that Liam couldn't find documentation for, strategy sessions that supposedly happened at hotels in New York and Boston, billed to Meridian's expense accounts but with no attendee records or agenda notes. He pulled the expense reports. There were charges, high-end hotels, expensive dinners, car services, but the dates were odd. One strategy session at the Mandarin Oriental in New York happened on a Saturday, billed for 2 nights, with dinner charges that suggested multiple people. Yet the only name on the expense report was Adrian's. Liam created a spreadsheet meticulously cross-referencing dates and charges with the official deal timeline. The pattern was subtle but consistent. Unexplained meetings at luxury hotels, dinner charges for groups when Adrian was supposedly working alone, travel that didn't align with client locations or board schedules. His office phone rang. Victoria, using the internal line instead of texting. "Can you come to my office?" Her voice was carefully neutral. "I need your input on resource allocation for next quarter." It was code. They'd established a handful of innocuous phrases for when they needed to talk without arousing suspicion. Liam grabbed a notepad and pen, playing the part of someone called for a routine consultation. Victoria's office was across the floor, glass-walled and visible to anyone paying attention. When he arrived, she was typing at her computer, the picture of professional focus. "Close the door," she said without looking up. He did, and she immediately swiveled her monitor toward him. On screen was an email chain, Adrian corresponding with someone named Melissa Chen, the same woman who'd been his date at the charity auction. "Look at the dates," Victoria said quietly. The emails spanned 8 months, from the early stages of the Whitmore merger through its completion. Most were innocuous, dinner confirmations, meeting logistics, but buried in the thread was a message that made Liam's pulse spike. "Adrian, the valuation adjustment went through. Board approved the revised terms. Dinner at Per Se to celebrate? Melissa, you always know how to close a deal. Saturday works. Usual arrangement? Adrian, of course, charge it to the Whitmore account." Liam read it twice. Usual arrangement? That's what caught my attention. Victoria minimized the screen. I pulled Melissa's background. She's not a Meridian employee. She's a consultant with a boutique advisory firm that specializes in pharmaceutical valuations. So she was working on the Whitmore deal. Except she's not listed anywhere in the official engagement letters or consultant agreements. Her firm was never formally retained by Meridian or the client. Liam felt the pieces starting to fit together. But she was advising on the valuation that justified the $5 million price increase. And having expensive dinners with Adrian that were billed to the deal expenses. Victoria's jaw was tight. That's a conflict of interest at minimum. If she influenced the valuation in exchange for personal benefits from Adrian, it's fraud. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. "We need more than one email," Victoria said. "This could be explained away as sloppy expense management. We need a pattern. I found hotel meetings that don't make sense. Strategy sessions on weekends with no documentation, billed to deal accounts but with no clear business justification." Victoria pulled up another file. "I've been going through Adrian's other major deals from the past 2 years. The Patterson acquisition, the Novak merger, the Biosphere transaction. They all have the same signature, valuation adjustments late in the process, consultant fees that don't tie to formal engagements, expense reports that suggest personal entertainment billed as business development. How much are we talking about? Across 4 deals, close to 18 million in inflated valuations, and at least 200,000 in questionable expenses." Liam whistled low. "That's enough to trigger a regulatory investigation if it's proven. It's also enough to destroy us if we're wrong, or if Adrian finds out we're digging." Victoria closed the files, her hands trembling slightly. "We need to be absolutely certain before we take this anywhere. Then we keep pulling threads, carefully." Over the next week, they developed a rhythm. Liam would identify discrepancies in deal structures during his legitimate analysis work, flagging items that needed clarification from Victoria's department. She would pull related files, searching for patterns while maintaining plausible deniability. They never discussed findings over email or office phones, only in person during carefully staged project consultations in her office. The evidence accumulated slowly. A consultant who appeared across multiple deals but never in formal engagement letters. Hotel charges in cities where no clients or board members were located. Valuation reports that cited proprietary analysis without attribution or methodology. Expense reports that showed patterns of entertainment spending far exceeding normal business development activity. Individually, each item could be explained. Collectively, they painted a picture of someone systematically exploiting deal processes for personal benefit, while inflating transaction values to mask the theft. But proof wasn't the only thing accumulating. So was Adrian's attention. Liam noticed it first in small ways. Adrian appearing in the break room when Liam was there, asking casual questions about current projects. Running into him in the lobby, where Adrian would make pointed comments about work-life balance and the importance of not overextending oneself. The interactions were brief, superficially friendly, and absolutely calculated to remind Liam that he was being watched. Then the pressure escalated. On Thursday afternoon, Liam's supervisor called him into a conference room. Dale Murphy was a decent manager, fair but unimaginative, the kind of person who followed procedures and avoided conflict. "Liam, I need to talk to you about your billable hours," Dale said, pulling up a spreadsheet. "You've been spending a lot of time on ancillary research that's not directly tied to client deliverables." Liam's stomach dropped. "The comparative analysis for the healthcare merger? That's standard due diligence. I understand, but the client's not paying for deep dives into historical transaction patterns. They're paying for analysis of their specific deal structure." Dale's expression was uncomfortable. "I've been asked to remind you that we need to stay focused on billable work. The firm's trying to optimize resource allocation." "Asked by who?" Dale hesitated. "That's not relevant. Just keep your hours tied to specific client needs, okay?" After the meeting, Liam sat in his cubicle staring at his computer screen, anger and frustration warring in his chest. Adrian was tightening the screws using standard management procedures to limit Liam's ability to investigate without leaving fingerprints. His phone buzzed. "Victoria. Need to see you. Not at office. Millennium Park. An hour." Liam grabbed his jacket and left without explanation, earning a curious look from Marcus that he ignored. The train ride to Millennium Park felt interminable, his mind racing through possibilities, each worse than the last. He found Victoria on a bench near Cloud Gate, the sculpture's reflective surface distorting the city skyline into abstract curves. She was in her professional armor, tailored coat, perfect posture, but her eyes gave away her fear. "They're moving up the partnership decision," she said as soon as Liam sat down. 2 weeks instead of 4. The committee's meeting next Friday to make final determinations." "Why the rush?" Adrian convinced them that the current uncertainty around relationship disclosures is creating instability. He framed it as being good for the firm, resolve questions quickly, move forward decisively. Victoria's laugh was bitter. What he actually did was cut our investigation timeline in half. Liam watched tourists take selfies with the bean, oblivious to the quiet crisis unfolding on the bench beside them. "How much do we have?" "Enough to raise questions. Not enough to prove wrongdoing." "Then we need to move faster. Or we need to be smarter." Victoria turned to face him. "I've been thinking about this wrong. We've been trying to build an airtight case before approaching anyone, but that's not how corporate investigations work. We don't need proof. We need enough smoke to trigger an official inquiry." "Who do we take it to?" "Compliance. They're independent from the partnership structure, and they're required to investigate credible allegations of misconduct." Liam considered it. "If we go to compliance with incomplete information and it doesn't stick, Adrian will bury us." "I know, but if we wait until we have everything, the partnership decision happens first, and Adrian's position becomes untouchable." Victoria's hands twisted together in her lap. "We're out of time, Liam. We have to make a choice. Risk everything on a partial case, or let him win." Before Liam could respond, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Carter, this is Principal Henderson from Lincoln Elementary. There's been an incident involving Emma, and we need you to come to the school immediately." Liam's world narrowed to a single point. "What kind of incident? Is she hurt?" "She's physically fine, but there was a situation with another student and some concerning statements were made. We need to discuss this in person." He was on his feet before the principal finished speaking. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Victoria stood with him. "What happened?" "I don't know. Something at Emma's school." He was already moving toward the train station, Victoria keeping pace beside him. "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do." Her voice left no room for argument. They made it to Lincoln Elementary in 18 minutes, Victoria's town car significantly faster than the train. The school was a small brick building in a neighborhood that was trying hard to stay middle class, with playground equipment that had seen better decades and chain link fencing that needed repair. Principal Henderson was waiting in her office, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with the patience of someone who'd spent 30 years managing children and their parents. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming so quickly." "And you are?" She looked at Victoria with polite inquiry. "Victoria Hale. I'm a friend of the family." Henderson nodded, gesturing for them to sit. "Emma's in the nurse's office with a juice box and some books. Like I said, she's not physically hurt. But this afternoon during recess, she got into an altercation with another student." "Emma doesn't get into fights," Liam said immediately. "It wasn't exactly a fight. The other child, Tyler Morrison, apparently made some comments about Emma's family situation, specifically about her not having a mother. Emma responded by pushing him down and saying some things that concerned the playground monitor." Liam felt his jaw tighten. "What did she say?" Henderson consulted her notes. According to the monitor, Emma told Tyler that people who judge families they don't understand are worse than bullies, and that just because someone's different doesn't make them less valuable. She looked up. Which, for the record, are very mature sentiments for a 6-year-old, but the pushing is obviously a problem we need to address. "I'll talk to her about the pushing," Liam said, "but Tyler shouldn't be making comments about her family." "Agreed, and we'll be addressing that with Tyler's parents as well. But there's another aspect to this." Henderson folded her hands on her desk. "Emma also mentioned that her dad has a girlfriend now, and that the girlfriend told her families come in all different shapes. The playground monitor noted this because it was the first any of us had heard about a change in your relationship status." Liam's blood went cold. He felt Victoria tense beside him. "I'm sorry," Henderson continued, "but given your custody arrangement and the documentation we have on file about Emma's family structure, we need to update our records when there are significant changes in household composition. It's standard procedure, especially for single-parent situations." "There's no change in household composition," Liam said carefully. "I'm dating someone. That doesn't mean she lives with us or has any kind of parental role." Henderson's gaze flicked to Victoria, then back to Liam. "I understand. But the school does need to be informed about adults who may be present in Emma's life on a regular basis. It's a safety protocol." Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice calm and professional. "Principal Henderson, I completely understand the school's position. For the record, I've met Emma a handful of times in casual settings. I'm not involved in her day-to-day care or school activities, and I certainly haven't positioned myself as a parental figure. I think Emma mentioned me today because she was defending her family structure against another child's judgment, and she included me as an example of her dad building a life despite being a single parent. It was a masterful deflection, acknowledging the situation while minimizing Victoria's role and reframing Emma's comments as self-defense rather than evidence of household changes." Henderson's expression softened slightly. "I appreciate the clarification, and I apologize if this feels intrusive. We just want to make sure Emma has the support and stability she needs." "She does," Liam said firmly. "Can I see her now?" Emma was sitting in the nurse's office looking small and defiant, her juice box empty and a stack of picture books beside her. When she saw Liam, her bottom lip trembled. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I know pushing is wrong." Liam knelt down in front of her, pulling her into a hug. "We'll talk about the pushing, but first tell me what Tyler said." "He said I don't have a real family because I don't have a mom, and that I'm weird." Emma's voice was muffled against his shoulder. "It made me really mad." "I know, Monkey. What he said was mean and wrong, but pushing him wasn't okay either." "I know." She pulled back, looking up at him with eyes that were too serious for 6 years old. "I told him families are different, and that's okay. Like Victoria told me." Liam glanced at Victoria, who was standing in the doorway looking stricken. "Victoria was right," Liam said gently. "Families do come in different shapes, but we still don't push people, even when they're being mean. You know that." "I know. I'm sorry." "Okay. We'll talk more at home. But right now I need you to apologize to your principal and promise to use your words instead of your hands next time." Emma nodded seriously, and they went back to Henderson's office where she delivered a sincere apology and accepted a one-day lunch detention for the pushing. On the way out of the school, Emma reached for Victoria's hand without hesitation, and Victoria's fingers closed around the small hand automatically. In the car, Liam felt the full weight of what had just happened settle over him. Adrian's investigation was one thing. HR reviews and partnership politics were professional problems with professional solutions. But this? Emma getting pulled into their carefully constructed fiction, defending a relationship that didn't really exist, getting in trouble because of statements Victoria had made trying to be kind. This was exactly what he'd feared from the beginning. "I'm so sorry," Victoria said quietly, reading his expression. "I never thought. It's not your fault." Liam watched Emma through the rearview mirror, absorbed in a book. She was defending herself. You gave her words that helped her feel less alone, and she used them. That's not a bad thing. But the school situation is manageable. I'll update their records, explain the situation. It's fine. But it wasn't fine, and they both knew it. The fiction they were maintaining had just leaked into Emma's world in a way that couldn't be easily contained. When they reached Liam's apartment, Victoria started to say goodbye, but Emma's voice stopped her. "Can Victoria stay for dinner, please?" Liam looked at Victoria, seeing his own exhaustion and uncertainty reflected back at him. They'd spent the day digging through evidence of fraud, racing against partnership timelines, and navigating school incidents. A normal person would go home, decompress, put distance between themselves and the chaos. Victoria didn't go home. "I'd love to stay," she said. Dinner was spaghetti from a box and sauce from a jar, served on mismatched plates at the kitchen table, while Emma explained in detail why velociraptors were actually much smaller than Jurassic Park suggested. Victoria listened with the same focused attention she brought to partnership meetings, asking questions and making observations that earned Emma's enthusiastic approval. After dinner, while Emma was in the bath, Liam and Victoria cleaned up in silence that felt both comfortable and charged with everything they weren't saying. "We need to make a decision," Victoria finally said, drying a plate. "About compliance. About the evidence we have. I know. If we wait, the partnership decision happens, and Adrian's position becomes unassailable. If we move now with what we have, we risk everything on an incomplete case." Liam set down the dish he'd been washing. "But there's a third option." "What?" "We don't go to compliance. We go to your father." Victoria's hands stilled. "What?" "Richard's on the board. He has a fiduciary responsibility to investigate credible allegations of misconduct. If we present him with the evidence, the pattern of expense irregularities, the valuation inconsistencies, the undocumented consultants, he can't ignore it. My father will think we're making it up to sabotage Adrian's opposition to our relationship. Maybe at first, but your father got where he is by recognizing patterns and assessing risk. If we present this as a business concern rather than a personal vendetta, if we frame it as protecting Meridian's reputation rather than attacking Adrian, he might actually listen." Victoria's expression shifted from skepticism to calculation. "It's risky. If he doesn't believe us, we've shown our hand with nothing to back it up. And if he does believe us, we've just given him ammunition to stop Adrian without making it about you or your partnership." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring at the soapy water in the sink. "The Winter Gala is this Saturday. My parents will be there. So will Adrian, and most of the partnership committee. If we're going to do this, we do it at the gala. Public setting, impossible for Adrian to spin it as a private dispute." "That's insane." "No more insane than anything else we've done." Liam turned to face her fully. "Victoria, we've been playing defense since this started. Every move we've made has been reactive, dealing with HR, managing my supervisor, handling school incidents. It's time to stop reacting and start acting. We take what we've found, we present it to your father in front of witnesses Adrian can't intimidate, and we let the facts speak for themselves. And if it backfires? If Adrian convinces everyone we're lying, then we lose. But we were going to lose anyway if we did nothing." Emma emerged from the bathroom in her pajamas, hair damp and smelling like strawberry shampoo. "Victoria, do you want to see my dinosaur collection before you go?" "I would love to," Victoria said, and for the next 20 minutes, Liam watched from the doorway as his daughter and his fake girlfriend sat on the floor surrounded by plastic stegosauruses and triceratopses, building what Emma called the most accurate dinosaur habitat ever. When Victoria finally left, promising to see Emma again soon, Liam walked her to the door. "Saturday," she said quietly. "We do this Saturday." "We do this Saturday," he confirmed. She hesitated on the threshold, looking back toward Emma's room. "She's really special. Your daughter." "Yeah, she is." "I won't let this hurt her. Whatever happens with Adrian, with the partnership, with any of it, I won't let it touch Emma." "I know." Victoria met his eyes, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with fake relationships or corporate fraud, something real and terrifying in its honesty. "Thank you," she said, "for believing this could work, for not giving up when you had every reason to. Thank you for trusting me enough to ask." She left, and Liam stood in the doorway watching her navigate the stairs in designer heels that had no business in his neighborhood. When she reached the bottom and looked back up, he raised a hand in farewell. They had 3 days to prepare. 3 days to organize their evidence, coordinate their approach, and steel themselves for the confrontation that would determine everything. 3 days until they stopped running from Adrian Cross and started fighting back. Liam closed the door and went to tuck Emma in, finding her already half asleep with her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy?" she mumbled. "I like Victoria." "Yeah, monkey. Me too." "Is she going to be around for a while?" Liam thought about Saturday's gala, about the evidence they'd compiled, about all the ways this could explode in their faces. He thought about the careful fiction they'd constructed and the uncomfortable truth that somewhere along the way, it had started feeling less like fiction. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I really hope so." Emma smiled sleepily and drifted off, and Liam sat in the darkened room thinking about the choice they'd made and the consequences waiting 3 days away. The next 3 days moved with the strange dual quality of racing forward while simultaneously dragging through molasses. Liam spent every spare moment organizing the evidence into a presentation that could withstand scrutiny. Expense reports cross-referenced with deal timelines, valuation discrepancies highlighted against market comparables, consultant payments traced through subsidiary accounts that shouldn't have existed. He worked late into the nights after Emma fell asleep, double-checking every connection, ensuring nothing could be dismissed as coincidence or misunderstanding. Victoria coordinated from her end, pulling additional documentation through channels that wouldn't trigger Adrian's attention. She requisitioned files under the guise of preparing for the partnership review, compiled board meeting minutes that referenced the deals in question, and quietly reached out to the firm's outside auditors with hypothetical questions about expense categorization that gave her a framework for what would constitute actual violations versus aggressive accounting. They met only twice during those 3 days, once in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office where they could spread papers across a corner table without being overheard, and once in Liam's apartment after Emma was asleep, working side by side on his secondhand couch while the city hummed beyond the windows. "This section on the Patterson acquisition," Victoria said during that second meeting, tapping her pen against the document spread across Liam's coffee table. "The valuation jump is documented, but the justification memo is signed by someone named Robert Chen. I can't find any record of him being retained as a consultant." Liam pulled up the master spreadsheet he'd been maintaining. Robert Chen appears on 3 deals. No engagement letters, no formal contracts, just expense reimbursements and one-time payments categorized as advisory fees. Total compensation across all 3 deals is about $80,000. "Let me check something." Victoria opened her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. After a moment, her expression hardened. Robert Chen is Melissa Chen's father. He's a retired pharmaceutical executive with no current business registrations or consulting credentials. So Adrian was paying his girlfriend's father for phantom consulting work, and using those payments to justify valuation increases that benefited Adrian's deal performance metrics. Victoria sat back, running her hands through her hair. "This is worse than I thought. It's not just expense fraud. It's a whole ecosystem of conflicts designed to inflate his track record." Liam studied the numbers, feeling the weight of what they'd uncovered settle over him. If we're right about this, Adrian's entire reputation at Meridian is built on manufactured success. Every deal he's closed in the past 3 years has hidden subsidies or inflated valuations that make his performance look better than it actually is. Which explains why he's so desperate to control the partnership structure. If anyone does a legitimate audit of his work, the whole thing collapses. and why he needs your voting shares. With enough control, he can block any investigation into his past deals. They worked until nearly 2 in the morning, refining their presentation until it told a clear, damning story. When Victoria finally left, exhaustion evident in every line of her body, Liam stood at the window watching her car disappear into the night and wondered if they were about to save themselves or destroy everything they'd been trying to protect. Friday at the office was agony. Liam went through the motions of his regular work, responding to emails about the healthcare merger and attending a team meeting where Dale reminded everyone about billable hour targets. Adrian was conspicuously absent in back-to-back meetings with the partnership committee, according to office gossip, making his final pitch for why the leadership structure needed to be formalized before year-end. Marcus stopped by Liam's desk during lunch, his expression more serious than usual. "So, tomorrow's the big gala." "Yeah. You and Victoria going to make another dramatic appearance on the dance floor?" Liam managed a smile that felt hollow. "Something like that. Look, man, I don't know what's going on with you two and Adrian, but people are talking. There's a pool going about whether you'll still be employed on Monday." "A pool?" "Karen from accounting is running it. Current odds are 60-40 in favor of you getting reassigned to a different department." Marcus lowered his voice. "Just watch your back tomorrow, okay? Adrian doesn't play fair and he's got the home field advantage at these events." After Marcus left, Liam stared at his computer screen without seeing it, his mind already at the gala, rehearsing the confrontation that would determine everything. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, his babysitter, confirming she could stay late tomorrow night. Then another from Victoria. "Final prep tonight after Emma's asleep?" He typed back, "I'll be ready." That evening, after dinner and a prolonged bath time negotiation, where Emma insisted she needed to bring her entire dinosaur collection into the tub for scientific accuracy, Liam settled her into bed with her favorite story about a brachiosaurus who learned to be brave. "Daddy?" Emma asked as he finished the last page. "Is tomorrow a big day?" "Why do you ask?" "Because you've been thinking really hard all week. You get this line right here." She touched the space between his eyebrows. "When you're worried about big stuff." Liam smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Tomorrow is kind of important. There's something I need to do that might change things at work." "Good changes or bad changes?" "I don't know yet, Monkey, but whatever happens, you and me, we're going to be fine. That's not going to change." Emma considered this with the gravity of someone much older than 6. "Victoria's helping you, isn't she? With the big important thing?" "Yeah, she is." "Good. I like her. She listens when I talk about dinosaurs, and most grown-ups just pretend to listen." "She's pretty special," Liam agreed and realized he meant it. "Are you going to marry her?" The question hit like a punch to the solar plexus. "What? Emma, we've only been seeing each other for a little while." "But do you like her the way you liked Mommy? Before Mommy got sick and had to go away?" Liam sat on the edge of Emma's bed, choosing his words carefully. His daughter rarely asked about her mother. The memories were too fragmented, the loss too abstract. But when she did, he owed her honesty. "I like Victoria very much. But liking someone and marrying them are different things. Marriage is for when two people are absolutely sure they want to build a whole life together." "And you're not sure yet?" "It's complicated, Monkey." Emma yawned, her eyes already drifting closed. "I think she makes you smile more." "That's good." After Emma fell asleep, Victoria arrived with 2 laptops and enough nervous energy to power the building. They spread out at the kitchen table, reviewing their presentation one final time, anticipating objections and preparing responses. "Your father's going to question the expense report analysis," Liam said, highlighting a section. "He'll want to know if there's a legitimate business justification we're missing." And we tell him we considered that. We cross-referenced Adrian's expenses with comparable partner spending, and his entertainment budget is 3 times higher than anyone else's, with most of it concentrated around deal closings. What about the valuation consultants? He'll ask why we think they're fraudulent rather than just unconventional. Because none of them have verifiable credentials in the relevant industries, and several have direct personal connections to Adrian. It's not unconventional, it's nepotistic at best and fraudulent at worst. They went back and forth, stress-testing every conclusion, until Victoria finally closed her laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes. We're as ready as we're going to be. You sure about this? Liam asked quietly. Once we do this, there's no walking it back. Even if we're right, people will remember that you went after a senior partner. It could affect how you're perceived. Victoria lowered her hands, meeting his gaze with something fierce and determined burning in her eyes. Adrian's been positioning himself to control my future since before I made junior partner. He's used his influence to isolate me, limited my access to certain clients, and tried to force me into a marriage that would serve his ambitions. I'm done being managed. If people judge me for fighting back, that says more about them than it does about me. Okay then. Liam reached across the table, covering her hand with his. We do this together. Her fingers curled around his, gripped tight and almost desperate. Thank you. For all of it. For believing me when I asked for help. For not walking away when this got complicated. For being willing to risk your career to help me fight. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. Because most people wouldn't have done what you've done. They would have calculated the risk and decided I wasn't worth it. Liam thought about that, about the careful calculus of self-preservation he'd been doing since Emma was born, always choosing the safe path because he had someone depending on him. And somehow, this deeply unsafe choice to stand beside Victoria had started to feel like the only path that made sense. You were worth it, he said simply. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, surprise melting into something softer and more vulnerable. She stood abruptly, gathering her laptop. I should go. Big day tomorrow. Victoria. I'll see you at the gala, 7 o'clock. Shamosim. Don't be late. She left quickly, and Liam sat alone at his kitchen table, wondering when exactly the lines between performance and reality had started to blur beyond recognition. Saturday arrived with cruel brightness, clear skies, crisp winter air, the kind of day that belonged in a tourism brochure rather than framing a potential career-ending confrontation. Liam took Emma to the Natural History Museum as promised, letting her lead him through the dinosaur exhibit while he tried not to think about the evening ahead. She was delighted by the Apatosaurus skeleton, devastated to learn that velociraptors had feathers, and utterly convinced that paleontology was definitely going to be her future career. Can we come back next week? She asked as they left, clutching a stuffed stegosaurus from the gift shop that Liam really couldn't afford but couldn't deny her. We'll see, monkey. Depends on how work goes. The big important thing? Yeah, the big important thing. Important. Back home, Sarah arrived early to start her extended babysitting shift. Emma was already in pajamas, curled up on the couch with her new dinosaur and a movie about talking animals that she'd seen approximately 40 times. You clean up nice, Sarah said when Liam emerged from his bedroom in the tuxedo he'd rented for the occasion. Hot date? Work event. Should be done by midnight. Take your time. Emma and I are having a movie marathon. Liam kissed Emma's forehead, promising to tell her all about the fancy dinner when he got home, and headed out into the early evening with his stomach in knots. The gala was at the Four Seasons this time, even more opulent than the charity auction had been. The ballroom was decorated in winter whites and silvers, with ice sculptures catching the light from massive chandeliers and enough floral arrangements to stock a greenhouse. Liam arrived precisely at 7 to find the lobby already filling with Meridian's partners and their spouses, board members and investors, the kind of people for whom $1,000 a plate dinner was just another Saturday night. Victoria was waiting near the coat check, stunning in a silver gown that caught the light when she moved. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might have come to your senses. She linked her arm through his, the gesture familiar now after weeks of practice. My parents are already at our table. So is Adrian. Perfect. Nothing like dinner conversation with the man we're about to accuse of fraud. Liam, I'm fine. Let's do this. The ballroom was even more impressive than the lobby, with round tables arranged around a central dance floor and a stage where the evening speeches would take place. Richard and Catherine were indeed at their assigned table, along with 2 other couples Liam didn't recognize, and Adrian with Melissa Chen on his arm. Adrian's smile when he saw them approach was poisonously pleasant. Victoria, Liam, so glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it, Victoria said smoothly, taking her seat. Dinner was a masterclass in polite warfare. Courses arrived with clockwork precision, seared scallops, duck confit, something involving truffles that probably cost more than Liam's monthly grocery budget, while conversation flowed in careful channels around business developments and market forecasts. Adrian held court with the easy confidence of someone certain of his position, making subtle digs about work-life balance and the challenges of managing competing priorities that were clearly aimed at Liam. "I hear your daughter had some trouble at school this week," Adrian said during the third course, his tone sympathetic in a way that set Liam's teeth on edge. 6-year-olds can be so sensitive to disruption in their routines. Victoria's hand found Liam's under the table, a warning squeeze. "Emma's fine," Liam said evenly. "Kids are resilient." Of course, though one wonders about the impact of parental stress on children that age. Single parenthood is challenging enough without adding workplace complications. Catherine cleared her throat delicately. "Adrian, perhaps we could discuss something other than other people's children at dinner." "You're absolutely right. My apologies." Adrian raised his wine glass. "To new beginnings and the exciting changes ahead for Meridian." The toast felt like a threat. Liam forced himself to sip his wine and maintain his expression, while his mind raced through their plan, checking contingencies and backup strategies. After dinner, the evening shifted into networking mode. People circulated between tables, forming clusters of conversation while the orchestra played background music. Richard excused himself to speak with several board members near the bar, and Catherine drifted toward a group of women discussing some charity initiative. Adrian stood, offering his arm to Melissa. "If you'll excuse us, I need to make the rounds before the speeches begin." As he passed behind Victoria's chair, he leaned down, voice pitched for only them to hear. "Enjoy the evening. It's the last gala you'll attend as Meridian partners." He was gone before either could respond, disappearing into the crowd with Melissa trailing behind him. "That was a threat," Liam said quietly. "That was a promise. He thinks he's already won." Victoria's jaw was set, her eyes tracking Adrian across the room. "Which means he's not expecting us to fight back. When do we approach your father?" "After the first round of speeches. He'll be in the private lounge with the senior board members. That's when we present everything." The next hour crawled. Liam made small talk with people whose names he promptly forgot, nursed a single glass of champagne to keep his head clear, and watched the room with growing tension. Victoria circulated separately, maintaining appearances, but he caught her glancing toward the private lounge entrance every few minutes. Finally, the speeches began. The CEO welcomed everyone, thanked them for their continued commitment to Meridian's growth, and introduced the CFO, who presented year-end financial highlights that meant nothing to most of the room but sounded impressive. Then came the announcement everyone had been waiting for. "This year has brought significant changes to our leadership structure," the CEO continued. "We're pleased to announce several promotions and organizational adjustments that will position Meridian for continued success." Liam felt Victoria tense beside him. Effective January 1st, Adrian Cross will be assuming the role of managing partner with expanded authority over strategic initiatives and partnership oversight. Scattered applause filled the room. Adrian stood at his table, accepting congratulations with practiced humility. "Additionally, we're pleased to announce the elevation of 3 new partners." The CEO read 3 names, none of them Victoria's. "These additions bring fresh perspectives and deep expertise to our leadership team." Victoria's face remained perfectly composed, but Liam saw the tightness around her eyes, the rigid set of her shoulders. The CEO concluded the announcements with platitudes about teamwork and vision, and the room erupted in applause. As people surged toward the bar for celebratory drinks, Victoria gripped Liam's arm. "Now! We go now!" They moved toward the private lounge, a smaller room off the main ballroom where the senior partners and board members gathered for less public conversations. A security guard stood at the entrance, but he recognized Victoria and stepped aside. The lounge was elegant and intimate, with leather furniture and subdued lighting. Richard was there along with 5 other board members, drinks in hand, discussing something that fell silent when Victoria and Liam entered. "Victoria?" Richard's expression was surprised but not displeased. "This is a private conversation." "I know, Dad, but we have something you need to see before you finalize Adrian's promotion. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. One of the board members, Harrison Campbell, Liam recognized him from photos, frowned. "This is hardly the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," Victoria interrupted, her voice steady and clear. "Because what we've found affects Meridian's legal exposure and fiduciary responsibility, and you need to know about it before Adrian assumes a position where he can block investigation." Richard's eyes narrowed. "That's a serious accusation. I hope you have serious evidence to back it up." "We do." Victoria pulled out her phone, connecting it to the room's presentation screen. Liam moved to stand beside her, presenting a unified front as the first slide appeared, a timeline of Adrian's major deals from the past 3 years. For the next 20 minutes, they walked the board through everything they'd found. The expense irregularities, the undocumented consultants with personal connections to Adrian, the valuation adjustments that consistently benefited Adrian's performance metrics while inflating transaction prices, the pattern of payments to Robert Chen, whose only qualification was being Melissa Chen's father. Harrison Campbell interrupted several times with pointed questions. Victoria answered each one with documented evidence, pulling up expense reports and email exchanges that supported every claim. Liam provided context from his restructuring analysis, showing how the valuation patterns deviated from industry standards. "This is circumstantial," another board member objected. "Aggressive expense management and using unconventional consultants isn't necessarily fraud. It is when the consultants have no relevant expertise and direct financial interest in inflating valuations," Victoria countered, "and when the pattern is consistent across multiple deals with no legitimate business justification." Richard had remained silent throughout the presentation, his expression unreadable. Now he stood, moving to examine the screen more closely. "You're alleging that Adrian has been systematically inflating deal values and misappropriating firm resources for personal benefit." "Yes," Victoria said, "and that he's been doing this for at least 3 years. Potentially longer. We only analyzed deals we could access without triggering his attention." Richard turned to face her, and Liam saw something in his expression that made his blood run cold. Not anger at Adrian, but disappointment in Victoria. "You've been investigating a senior partner without authorization, accessing confidential deal files, analyzing expense reports, building a case against a colleague." Richard's voice was ice. "Do you understand how this looks? My daughter, passed over for partnership, presenting allegations against the man who was just promoted? Dad, it looks like sour grapes, like you're manufacturing a scandal because you didn't get what you wanted." "That's not what this is," Liam interjected. "The evidence stands on its own, regardless of who found it." Richard's attention shifted to him, and Liam felt the full weight of the man's scrutiny. "Mr. Carter, you're a restructuring analyst. What possible business justification did you have for pulling expense reports on deals outside your current client assignments?" "I was conducting comparative analysis for the healthcare merger. Historical transaction patterns are standard due diligence. For transactions relevant to your client's industry, Adrian's deals span multiple sectors with no connection to healthcare. You weren't doing due diligence. You were fishing." The door opened and Adrian entered with 2 other senior partners, Melissa hovering behind them. His expression when he saw the presentation on the screen was a perfect mask of confused concern. "What's going on here?" Harrison Campbell gestured at the screen. "Victoria and her companion have been presenting allegations about your deal management practices." Adrian studied the slides, his face carefully neutral. "I see. May I respond?" "Please do," Richard said. Adrian moved to stand beside the screen, and Liam watched him transform into the polished dealmaker who'd built his reputation at Meridian. "I understand how this might look concerning to someone unfamiliar with complex transaction dynamics. But every consultant referenced in this analysis was retained for specific expertise. Robert Chen, for instance, provided invaluable insight into pharmaceutical supply chain logistics based on 30 years of industry experience." "He has no consulting credentials," Victoria countered. "Credentials aren't required for subject matter expertise. We frequently use retired executives for specialized knowledge." Adrian advanced to the next slide. "As for the expense patterns, yes, I invest heavily in relationship development. That's how deals get closed. Every dinner, every hotel meeting, every travel expense was in service of client success." And the valuation adjustments? Liam asked. The consistent pattern of price increases justified by consultants with personal connections to you? Due diligence frequently reveals information that changes valuations. That's not fraud, it's thorough analysis. Adrian's smile was sympathetic. I appreciate your concern, but you're seeing malice where there's simply good deal-making. One of the other board members nodded slowly. It's aggressive, Adrian, but I don't see clear evidence of misconduct. Actually, a new voice cut through the room, you should see plenty of evidence if you look at the complete picture. Everyone turned toward the door where Catherine Hale stood, her phone in her hand and her expression carved from granite. I've been listening from the hallway, she said, moving into the room. And I've been doing some research of my own. Richard, check your email. I just forwarded you something interesting. Richard pulled out his phone, his frown deepening as he read whatever Catherine had sent. Where did you get this? From Melissa's Instagram account, which she's apparently never set to private. Fascinating what people post when they think no one's watching. Catherine moved to the presentation screen, taking control and pulling up a series of photos. These are from the past 18 months. Melissa Chen on a yacht in the Caribbean, posted during the Whitmore merger closing. At the Mandarin Oriental in New York, same weekend as one of Adrian's unexplained hotel stays. At Per Se, the dinner Adrian charged to the Whitmore deal account. The photos were damning. Melissa posed against luxury backdrops, tagged with locations and dates that aligned perfectly with Adrian's expense reports. She's my girlfriend, Adrian said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. There's nothing inappropriate about billing personal vacations with your girlfriend as business expenses? Catherine's tone could have cut glass. About paying her father $80,000 in consulting fees when he has no relevant expertise? About systematically inflating deal values to mask the misappropriation of firm resources? She advanced through more photos, Robert Chen at what appeared to be a family dinner, toasting with Adrian. Melissa wearing jewelry that probably cost more than Liam made in a year. Adrian and Melissa at locations that corresponded exactly with the unexplained hotel charges. This isn't circumstantial, Catherine concluded. This is a pattern of using Meridian's money to fund a lifestyle while disguising it as legitimate business expenses. And the valuation inflation? That's securities fraud if those numbers were used in any filings or investor presentations. The room was utterly silent. Adrian's expression had gone from confident to cornered, his hands clenched at his sides. Richard looked at Harrison Campbell. Call compliance, now, and get our outside counsel on the line. Richard, this is clearly a misunderstanding, Adrian began. This is clearly a disaster, Richard interrupted. Whether it rises to criminal fraud or simply gross misconduct, it's a liability this firm can't afford. You're suspended pending investigation, effective immediately. You can't do this based on social media photos and circumstantial analysis. I can do this based on my fiduciary responsibility to this firm and its clients. If you're confident in your innocence, the investigation will clear you. Richard's voice was steel. Until then, you're to have no contact with clients, no access to deal files, and no involvement in partnership decisions. Adrian's gaze swept the room, landing finally on Victoria with something dark and furious burning in his eyes. This isn't over. Yes, Catherine said quietly. It is. Security was called. Adrian was escorted from the lounge, Melissa following in his wake with tears streaming down her face. The board members erupted into urgent conversation about damage control and legal exposure. In the chaos, Liam felt Victoria's hand find his, gripping tight enough to hurt. We did it, she whispered, her voice shaking. No, Liam said, squeezing back. You did it. I just helped you pull the trigger. Richard approached them, his expression complicated. Victoria, I need to speak with you privately. Anything you say to me, you can say in front of Liam. Richard glanced at Liam, then back to his daughter. You took an enormous risk bringing this forward. If you'd been wrong, but I wasn't wrong. No, you weren't. He paused, and something in his face softened fractionally. Your mother told me weeks ago that Adrian was positioning himself inappropriately. I told her I needed evidence before I could act. You gave me that evidence. So what happens now? Now compliance conducts a formal investigation. If the findings support your analysis, Adrian will be terminated and possibly face criminal charges. The partnership announcement will be revised. And you, Richard looked between them. You'll both need to be available for interviews and depositions. Understood, Victoria said. Catherine appeared at Richard's elbow. The CEO wants to make a statement. We need to coordinate messaging before people start speculating. I'll be right there. Richard turned back to Victoria. We'll talk more tomorrow, but for tonight, thank you for having the courage to bring this forward. He left with Catherine, the other board members following in their wake, until Liam and Victoria were alone in the private lounge with the evidence of Adrian's misconduct still displayed on the screen. Victoria sank into one of the leather chairs, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. We actually did it. Liam sat beside her. How are you feeling? Terrified. Relieved? Like I might throw up. She laughed shakily. That's normal, right? Completely normal. He reached over, covering her hand with his. You were incredible in there. The way you presented the evidence, the way you stood up to your father, the way my mother swooped in with Instagram receipts and saved our asses. Victoria smiled through what might have been tears. I had no idea she was investigating too. Your parents make a formidable team. Yeah, they do. She was quiet for a moment, her thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of his hand. What happens now? With us, I mean. The fake relationship. We don't need it anymore. Liam felt something tighten in his chest. No, I guess we don't. So we should probably stage that breakup we talked about. Mutual, amicable, just like we planned. Probably. Neither of them moved. Victoria's hand stayed in his, warm and real and utterly unlike the careful performance they'd been maintaining. The thing is, Victoria said quietly, somewhere in the middle of all this, I forgot we were pretending. Yeah, Liam said. Me too. She looked up at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes took his breath away. Emma told you she liked me, didn't she? How did you know? Because she told me the same thing. When you were tucking her in on Wednesday, she came back out and said she hoped I'd stay around because you smiled more when I was there. Victoria's voice cracked slightly, and I realized I hoped I'd stay around too. Not because of Adrian or the partnership or any of it. Just because being with you, being with both of you, feels right in a way nothing else has in a very long time. Liam's heart was hammering against his ribs. Victoria, I know this is crazy. I know we built this relationship on lies and necessity, and we barely know each other outside of corporate fraud investigations. But I also know that when you showed up at my townhouse with your toolbox and your patience and your ridiculous integrity, you changed everything. She took a shaky breath. So I guess what I'm asking is, would you want to try this for real? No performance? No timeline? Just us figuring out what this could be. Liam thought about all the reasons to say no. The complications at work, the risk to Emma's stability, the fact that Victoria lived in a completely different world with different expectations and different challenges. He thought about playing it safe, protecting himself and his daughter, choosing the careful path. And then he thought about the way Victoria had listened to Emma explain dinosaurs like it was the most important conversation in the world. The way she'd stood in front of the board and fought for what was right, even when it would have been easier to walk away. The way she made him feel like maybe he was worth more than just surviving. Yes, he said, I want to try this for real. Her smile was brilliant and terrified and absolutely beautiful. Yeah? Yeah? He stood, offering his hand. Come on, let's get out of here before anyone else tries to make speeches. They left the Four Seasons together, trading the ornate ballroom for the cold clarity of the Chicago night. Victoria's town car was waiting, but she waved the driver off. Let's walk for a bit, she said, and Liam agreed because the night felt too significant to rush through. They walked along Michigan Avenue, the lights from the shop windows casting patterns on the sidewalk, talking about everything and nothing. Emma's dinosaur obsession, Victoria's relief that the Adrian situation was finally over, Liam's plans to maybe take some weekend carpentry courses if he could afford them, Victoria's admission that she had no idea what happened next with her career, but for the first time in years, she felt like she could make choices instead of just reacting to other people's agendas. When they reached the river, Victoria stopped, looking out over the dark water. My parents are going to want to have dinner again, she said. With you, for real this time. I can handle that. And Emma, we'll need to talk to her. Make sure she understands that this is real now, that I'm not just Daddy's friend from work anymore. She'll probably just ask if you're going to move in and bring your own dinosaurs." Victoria laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "I don't have any dinosaurs." "We'll fix that. Emma's very generous about sharing her collection with people she likes." They stood there in the cold, watching the city lights reflect off the river, and Liam felt something settle in his chest, not the careful calculation he'd been doing for years, but something quieter and more certain. "I should get home," he said finally. "Sarah's been with Emma for hours, and I promised I'd be back by midnight." "Okay." Victoria didn't move. "Liam." "Yeah?" "Thank you for everything, for being exactly who you are when I needed someone exactly like you." He kissed her then, there on the bridge with the city sprawling around them, and it felt nothing like the careful performance they'd been maintaining. It felt like beginning something real with someone worth fighting for. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears or might have been hope. "See you tomorrow?" she asked. "See you tomorrow," he confirmed. "For real this time." Liam made it home at 11:45, finding Sarah on the couch with her textbook spread around her and Emma's sleeping form tucked under a blanket beside her. The babysitter looked up when he entered, taking in what must have been a different expression than he'd left with. "Good night?" she asked, closing her chemistry book. "Yeah," Liam said, and meant it. "Really good night." After Sarah left with payment and genuine thanks, Liam carried Emma to her bedroom, settling her into bed without waking her. She mumbled something about pterodactyls in her sleep, and he smoothed her hair back before heading to his own room, feeling the weight of the evening settle over him in waves, exhaustion and exhilaration, and the strange, uncertain hope of something real beginning. His phone buzzed as he was changing out of the tuxedo. "Victoria. Made it home. Still can't quite believe today happened." He typed back, "Believe it. You were brilliant. We were brilliant. Together." Liam stared at that word, together, and felt something shift in his understanding of what the next months might hold. They'd stopped performing and started building something genuine, but the foundations were still shaky, constructed on weeks of carefully maintained fiction. Converting that into something sustainable would take work, honesty, and navigating complications they'd only begun to understand. But for tonight, he let himself believe it was possible. Sunday morning arrived with Emma bouncing on his bed at 7:30, demanding pancakes and updates about the fancy party. Liam obliged on both counts, making chocolate chip pancakes while describing the ice sculptures and the fancy dinner in terms a 6-year-old could appreciate. "Did you dance with Victoria again?" Emma asked around a mouthful of pancake. "Not this time, but we talked a lot about important stuff." "Like what?" Liam flipped another pancake, choosing his words carefully. "Like how sometimes when grown-ups start out as friends, they realize they want to be more than friends. And we decided we want to try that, for real, not just for work events." Emma considered this with the gravity she applied to all important dinosaur-related decisions. "So she's your actual girlfriend now? Not just pretend?" The question caught him off guard. "You knew it was pretend?" "Daddy, I'm 6, not stupid. You smiled differently when she was around at first, like you were acting in a school play. But then you started smiling real smiles." She took another bite. "I like the real smiles better." Liam sat across from her, astounded by his daughter's perceptiveness. "You're way too smart for your own good, monkey." "I know. So is Victoria going to come over more? Because I have more dinosaurs to show her, and she promised we could go to the museum again." "Yeah, she's going to come over more. But Emma, this is new, and we're figuring it out as we go. That means sometimes things might be confusing or change. Is that okay?" Emma shrugged with the resilience of someone who'd already learned that family came in different shapes. "As long as you keep smiling the real way." The rest of Sunday passed in comfortable domesticity. Laundry, grocery shopping, helping Emma with a dinosaur diorama for school that involved far too much glitter. Victoria texted periodically with updates about the compliance investigation, which was apparently moving with impressive speed now that the board was involved. Adrian had been officially suspended, his access to all firm systems revoked, and outside counsel had been retained to conduct an independent review of his deal history. Monday morning, Liam walked into Meridian Capital expecting chaos. What he found was something more subtle, a building-wide awareness that something significant had shifted. People clustered in hallways, speaking in low voices. Marcus intercepted him before he'd even reached his cubicle. "Dude, what the hell happened Saturday?" "Adrian suspended, pending investigation." "Yeah, I got the email Sunday night, but nobody knows why, and the rumor mill is working overtime. Karen from accounting thinks it's embezzlement. Dale heard it was sexual harassment. What's the actual story?" Liam set down his bag, weighing how much he could say. "Financial irregularities, that's all I can share." "Financial irregularities that you and Victoria discovered?" "We flagged some concerns, the board took it from there." Marcus studied him with renewed interest. "You know the new betting pool is about whether you get promoted or fired for this, right?" "That's comforting." "Current odds are in your favor." "Barely." Marcus lowered his voice. "Seriously, though, watch yourself. Adrian has friends here, and suspended doesn't mean powerless." The warning proved prescient. By Tuesday, Liam noticed the subtle freeze-out. Colleagues who normally stopped to chat suddenly finding urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Meetings where he wasn't included despite working on relevant projects. A general atmosphere of people distancing themselves from someone who might be toxic by association. Dale called him in Wednesday afternoon, looking profoundly uncomfortable. "Liam, we need to discuss your current assignments." "Okay." "The healthcare merger client has requested a different analyst. They're not comfortable with the recent situation." Liam felt his jaw tighten. "I haven't been accused of anything. I helped identify financial irregularities." "I understand, but the client doesn't want to be associated with controversy, and they've made their preference clear." Dale pulled up a project list. "I'm reassigning you to the Riverside Partners restructuring. It's solid work, good exposure, just a different client base." The translation: clients who had less political capital and couldn't afford to be picky about which analysts they got. "Fine," Liam said, though it wasn't fine. It was the beginning of professional consequences he'd known were possible, but hoped might be avoided. When he left Dale's office, he found Victoria waiting in the hallway, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp with concern. "You got reassigned. News travels fast." "I'm sorry, this is because of the investigation." "This is because I chose to help you, and I'd make the same choice again." Liam softened his tone. "I knew there'd be fallout. It's manageable." "It shouldn't be happening at all." Victoria glanced around, then lowered her voice. "My father wants to meet with you. Officially. He has questions about the analysis you conducted." "When?" "Tomorrow morning, his office, 9 a.m. And Liam?" She caught his arm as he started to walk away. "He's not trying to intimidate you. He's trying to understand your methodology, so compliance can replicate it across Adrian's other deals." That meeting took place in Richard Hale's corner office, an intimidating space of dark wood and leather furniture with views of the Chicago skyline that reinforced exactly where Liam stood in the corporate hierarchy. Richard was behind his desk when Liam arrived, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed documents. "Mr. Carter, sit." Liam sat, maintaining eye contact despite every instinct screaming at him to look away. "I've reviewed your analysis of Adrian's expense patterns and valuation methodologies. It's thorough work, more thorough than some of our senior analysts would have produced." Richard removed his glasses. "Where did you learn to cross-reference subsidiary accounts with expense allocations?" "I've been doing restructuring analysis for 4 years. You learn to look for money that doesn't add up, and you applied those skills to investigating a senior partner without authorization. I applied them to understanding patterns in deal structures that were relevant to my client work. The fact that those patterns revealed misconduct was a consequence, not the objective." Richard's expression didn't change. "That's a careful answer." "It's the truth." "Perhaps." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Compliance wants to hire you as a consultant for the remainder of the investigation. They need someone who understands both the restructuring methodology and the specific irregularities you identified. The contract would be 6 months, full-time, significant pay increase." Liam blinked, blindsided by the offer. "I'm not a compliance specialist." "No, but you're someone who found what everyone else missed because you asked the right questions. That's more valuable than credentials." Richard slid a folder across the desk. "Think about it. The offer's open until next week. As Liam stood to leave, Richard spoke again. My daughter believes you're someone worth taking seriously. Given her judgment in this matter proved more reliable than mine, I'm inclined to agree. It wasn't an apology, but coming from Richard Hale, it was probably as close as Liam would get. The compliance offer sat on Liam's kitchen table for 3 days while he weighed the implications. More money, desperately needed money, and recognition for his analytical skills, but also 6 months of being the face of Adrian's downfall, of depositions and interviews and making enemies of anyone who'd benefited from Adrian's network. He talked it through with Victoria over coffee on Friday evening, sitting in the Italian restaurant that had become their place despite its terrible acoustics. You should take it, Victoria said. It's a career maker. Compliance work at this level, exposure to board-level investigations. People build whole careers on less. And what happens to us while I'm spending 60 hours a week being interrogated about expense reports? She reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. We figure it out. Together, remember? Together's a lot harder when one of us is working insane hours and the other's dealing with partnership politics. Then we make it work anyway. Victoria's grip tightened. Liam, I didn't fight this hard to build something real with you just to let logistics get in the way. If you want this job, take it. We'll handle the rest. He studied her face, seeing the determination there and the genuine belief that they could navigate whatever complications arose. Okay, he said. I'll take it. The partnership announcement came the following Monday, revised, as Richard had promised. Victoria's name was on the list this time, along with 3 others whose promotions had been delayed pending resolution of organizational restructuring. The official statement made no mention of Adrian, but everyone knew the restructuring meant his removal. Marcus appeared at Liam's new compliance office with a grin that could have lit the city. Your girlfriend made partner. That's got to feel good. It does, Liam admitted. And it did, despite the complications it added to their still new relationship, the power dynamic shift, the heightened scrutiny they'd face, the gossip that would follow them. Victoria called him an hour later, her voice bright with emotion barely contained. I made partner. I heard. Congratulations. My first official act as partner is taking my boyfriend to dinner to celebrate, somewhere expensive where they don't know us and won't care about corporate politics. Your boyfriend? Well, you are, aren't you? Officially and everything? Liam smiled despite the absurdity of having this conversation in his office where anyone could overhear. Yeah, I am. Good. Because I already made reservations, and it would be awkward to cancel. That dinner happened on Saturday, at a restaurant in a neighborhood far enough from Meridian's usual haunts that they could relax without constantly scanning for colleagues. They talked about everything: Victoria's partnership responsibilities, Liam's first week with compliance, Emma's latest dinosaur obsession, the fact that they'd somehow managed to build something real out of a fake relationship born from desperation. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Victoria admitted over dessert, for this to feel too good to be sustainable. Maybe it is sustainable. Maybe we just got lucky. Lucky because you agreed to help a near stranger avoid an arranged marriage by pretending to be her boyfriend? Lucky because that near stranger turned out to be someone worth fighting for. Victoria's eyes shimmered with something that might have been tears. I want you to meet my parents again, for real this time. Not as my fake boyfriend or my investigation partner, but as the person I'm actually building a life with. That's terrifying. I know, but they've been asking, and my mother's started making pointed comments about wanting to know Emma better, and I think we've delayed long enough. That meeting happened 2 weeks later at Richard and Catherine's penthouse overlooking the lake. Liam brought Emma this time, who was initially intimidated by the marble floors and expensive art, before Catherine produced a collection of National Geographic magazines about dinosaurs and won her over completely. Richard was more reserved, but he watched Emma explain the difference between herbivores and carnivores to his wife with something approaching approval. She's bright, he told Liam during a quiet moment on the balcony. Reminds me of Victoria at that age, curious, confident, unafraid to correct adults when they're wrong about facts. But Emma's never met a fact she didn't want to verify, Liam agreed. Richard was quiet for a moment, looking out over the city. I owe you an apology. When Victoria first introduced you, I made assumptions about your motivations based on superficial circumstances. I was wrong. You were protecting your daughter. I was prejudging you based on income disparity and single-parent status. That's not protection, it's prejudice. Richard turned to face him. You've proven yourself someone of integrity and capability. That matters more than which tax bracket you occupy. It wasn't effusive, but coming from Richard Hale, it was significant. Inside, Catherine and Emma had progressed from dinosaurs to baking, producing cookies that were enthusiastically, if not skillfully, decorated. Victoria watched them with an expression Liam couldn't quite read, something soft and yearning that made his chest tight. She's good with Emma, Richard observed. Yeah, she is. Victoria's always wanted children. She just never thought she'd have the space in her life to make it work. Richard's gaze was assessing. Seems like she's reconsidering that calculation. The implications of that statement hung in the air, too significant to address directly, but impossible to ignore. The compliance investigation concluded in March, 3 months after the gala. Adrian was formally terminated, his partnership shares revoked, and criminal charges filed for wire fraud and securities violations related to the inflated valuations. Several of his deals were unwound or renegotiated, costing Meridian millions in settlements but protecting them from larger regulatory exposure. Liam's 6-month contract was extended to a permanent position as senior compliance analyst, with a salary that finally allowed him to breathe without constantly calculating whether he could afford groceries and rent in the same week. He moved Emma to a better school district, fixed the bathroom leak that had been annoying him for 2 years, and opened a college savings account that had more than $17 in it. Victoria's partnership came with its own complications: longer hours, more travel, the constant pressure of proving she deserved the promotion rather than receiving it as consolation for the Adrian situation. But she navigated it with the same fierce competence she'd applied to everything else, and slowly the whispers about nepotism faded into respect for her actual work. They found their rhythm gradually, learning to balance Emma's needs with Victoria's partnership demands and Liam's compliance schedule. Dinner at Liam's apartment twice a week. Museum trips with Emma on Saturdays when Victoria wasn't traveling. Sunday brunches that sometimes included Richard and Catherine, who developed an unexpected fondness for Emma's enthusiastic dinosaur lectures. It wasn't always smooth. There were arguments about scheduling and disagreements about how much of Victoria's world Emma should be exposed to, and difficult conversations about what their future actually looked like, given their different backgrounds and circumstances. But they worked through it with the same determined honesty they'd applied to investigating Adrian. No pretense, no performance, just two people figuring out how to build something real. 6 months after the gala, Victoria showed up at Liam's apartment on a Tuesday evening with takeout and a bottle of wine, and an expression that suggested she'd been working up courage all day. I need to talk to you about something, she said after Emma was in bed, and they were settled on the couch with their food. Liam's stomach dropped. Okay. My lease is up next month, and I've been thinking about what I want my life to look like going forward. She set down her wine glass. I don't want to keep splitting time between your place and mine. I don't want Emma to think of me as someone who visits occasionally. I want to be part of your daily life, both of your daily lives, in a real permanent way. Victoria, I know it's fast. I know we've only been really together for 6 months, and conventional wisdom says we should wait longer before making big decisions. But we built this relationship in crisis mode, and we've already survived things that break most couples. I don't want to waste time being careful when I'm already sure. Liam felt his heart hammering. Sure about what? About you. About Emma. About wanting to build a life that includes school pickups and dinosaur dioramas, and arguing about whether we can afford the museum membership. She took a shaky breath. About wanting to be part of your family, if you'll have me. He set down his own glass, pulling her close. Are you asking to move in? I'm asking if you'd consider letting me be a real part of Emma's life. A parental figure eventually, if that's something you both want. I know it's complicated, and I know I don't have any legal claim, but yes. Victoria pulled back to look at him. Yes? Yes, I want you to move in. Yes, I want you to be part of Emma's life in whatever capacity feels right. Yes to building something permanent instead of careful. He smiled at her stunned expression. Was that not clear? I thought you'd need time to think about it. I've been thinking about it for months. Every time you leave, every time Emma asks when you're coming back, Every time I wake up alone and wish you were there. I've been thinking about it. He cupped her face in his hands. You're already family, Victoria. Has been since the night you stood up to your father with evidence of fraud because you believed it was right. We're just making it official. Her laugh was shaky and bright. We should probably ask Emma. Probably. But I already know what she'll say. They asked her the next morning over pancakes, the chocolate chip kind that had become tradition for important conversations. Emma listened with the gravity of someone being consulted on matters of great significance, then announced that Victoria could absolutely move in, but she'd need to bring some of her own dinosaurs because sharing was important, but so was everyone having their own collection. The logistics took another month, coordinating leases, moving Victoria's furniture into storage because Liam's apartment couldn't accommodate two households, having difficult conversations with Emma about what it meant to have Victoria living with them full-time. They found a new place together, bigger but still affordable, in a neighborhood with good schools and a park where Emma could play. Richard and Catherine helped with the move, which Liam found both surreal and touching. Watching Richard Hale carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs while Catherine organized Emma's dinosaur collection by geological period felt like crossing some threshold into a reality he'd never quite imagined for himself. You know, Catherine said during a break, watching Victoria and Emma arrange books in the new apartment's living room. When Victoria first told us she was bringing someone to dinner, I was skeptical. I thought she was making a rash decision to avoid Adrian's pressure. I'm glad I was wrong. So am I, Liam said. You've been good for her. She smiles more, laughs more freely. She's still ambitious, still driven, but there's a lightness to her that wasn't there before. She's been good for us too. Emma's never had... Liam paused, emotion catching in his throat. She's never had someone who chose to be in her life. Her mother didn't choose to leave, but she did leave. Having Victoria choose to stay, to be present, to show up for school events and dinosaur emergencies, it matters. Catherine squeezed his shoulder with maternal warmth. You're a good father, Liam, and you found yourself a good partner. Don't let anyone tell you that unconventional beginnings mean the ending can't be happy. A year after the gala, Meridian Capital held its annual winter event at the Four Seasons. Same venue, same excessive ice sculptures, but an entirely different context for Liam and Victoria. They arrived together, Victoria resplendent in a navy gown, and Liam comfortable now in his own tuxedo, no longer borrowed from Marcus. Emma was with Sarah for the evening, bribed with promises of a museum trip the next day if she went to bed on time. Before they'd left, she'd made Victoria promise to dance with Liam at least twice, and to bring home one of the fancy desserts if possible. The ballroom was filled with familiar faces, colleagues who'd watched the Adrian drama unfold, board members who'd overseen the investigation, partners who'd initially been skeptical of Victoria's promotion but had since been won over by her performance. The whispers that followed them now were different: respect instead of speculation, interest instead of judgment. Marcus found them near the bar, grinning widely. Look at you two. Actual couple at an actual work event. How's it feel to be legitimate? Exhausting, Victoria said, but worth it. Heard through the grapevine that compliance is expanding and they're looking for a department head. You applying, Liam? Maybe. Still deciding if I want to commit to management or stay hands-on with investigations. Either way, you've come a long way from the guy building my bookshelves for beer money. Marcus raised his glass. To unconventional career paths and relationships that shouldn't work but do anyway. They toasted, and Liam felt the weight of the past year settle over him, the fear and the risk and the moments when everything could have fallen apart, but somehow didn't. Richard found them after dinner, pulling Liam aside for a private conversation in the same lounge where they'd confronted Adrian a year ago. I wanted to tell you before the announcement, Richard said. The board voted this morning. We're creating a new position, Chief Compliance Officer, reporting directly to the board, with authority over all internal investigations and audit processes. Liam's heart rate picked up. Okay. We'd like to offer you the position. It's a significant promotion, substantial increase in both salary and authority, and it would make you one of the youngest officers in the firm's history. Richard's expression was serious. It would also make you my daughter's colleague at the executive level, which creates its own complications. I'd be working with Victoria? Alongside her, yes. Different departments, different responsibilities, but equivalent rank. Which means office politics, power dynamics, the constant scrutiny of people watching to see if favoritism plays a role in either of your careers. Richard paused. It's not an easy path, but I believe you're someone who can handle difficult paths with integrity. Liam thought about the past year. The investigations, the depositions, the careful rebuilding of his reputation, and Victoria's. He thought about Emma thriving in her new school, about the stability they'd finally achieved, about the life he and Victoria had built together from the wreckage of Adrian's schemes. I'd be honored to accept, he said. Richard extended his hand. Welcome to the executive team, Mr. Carter. When Liam returned to the ballroom, Victoria took one look at his face and pulled him onto the dance floor. What happened? Your father just offered me chief compliance officer. She stopped moving, eyes wide. What? Executive level, board oversight, the whole thing. Liam, that's... She laughed, bright and delighted. That's incredible. You're going to accept, right? Already did. Victoria kissed him there in the middle of the dance floor, not caring who was watching or what they'd say. When they finally pulled apart, she was beaming. We're going to be impossible to deal with, aren't we? Partner and chief compliance officer in a relationship, living together, raising a child. The gossip will be endless. Probably. Can you live with that? I can live with anything as long as I'm living it with you. They danced through the rest of the evening, and when the speeches began, Liam watched Victoria stand at the podium as the CEO recognized the partnership class and talked about Meridian's commitment to integrity and accountability. She was poised and professional and absolutely in her element, and when she caught his eye from across the room, her smile was private and real and meant only for him. Later, after they'd made their excuses and escaped into the cool spring night, Victoria pulled him toward the Riverwalk where they'd stood a year ago, deciding to make their fake relationship real. Remember when we stood here and I asked if you wanted to try this for real? She said, looking out over the dark water. I remember. I was terrified you'd say no, that you'd decide the risk wasn't worth it. And now? Now I know the risk was nothing compared to what we built. She turned to face him. I love you, Liam Carter. I love your integrity and your patience and the way you love your daughter. I love that you took a chance on me when you had every reason not to. I love the life we're building together. Liam felt emotion tighten his throat. I love you too. I love your fierce determination and your willingness to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. I love that you chose us, me and Emma, when you could have chosen safety. There's nothing safe about loving someone, but there's nothing better either. He kissed her again, there on the bridge where they'd started something real a year ago, and felt the certainty of it settle in his bones. This wasn't the careful performance they'd begun with, or the desperate alliance they'd formed against Adrian. This was something they'd built deliberately, with honesty and work, and the willingness to show up for each other even when it was complicated. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was smiling through tears. Let's go home, she said. I promised Emma we'd bring dessert, and Sarah's probably exhausted from 3 hours of dinosaur facts. Home sounds perfect. They walked back to the car hand in hand, talking about whether Emma would still be awake and arguing about which museum exhibit they'd visit tomorrow. Small things, domestic things, the kind of ordinary moments that made up a life. Liam's phone buzzed as they reached the parking garage. A text from Emma, sent from Sarah's phone. Did you dance? Did you bring cake? Victoria said you'd bring cake. He showed Victoria, who laughed and typed back a response, promising both cake and a full report on the dancing. In the car, heading back to their apartment where Emma would be waiting with questions and Sarah would be ready to leave, Liam felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because everything was perfect or because there wouldn't be more challenges ahead, but because he'd found people worth fighting for and they'd chosen to fight alongside him. Victoria reached over, lacing her fingers through his. No regrets? She asked. Not a single one. Good, because I'm planning to keep you around for a very long time. How long are we talking? She smiled, private and certain. How does forever sound? Liam thought about Emma's dinosaur collection spread across their new living room, about Victoria's clothes hanging beside his in the closet, about the chief compliance officer position waiting for him Monday morning. He thought about Sunday brunches with Richard and Catherine, about school plays and science fairs, about building something permanent with someone he'd started out pretending to love and ended up loving for real. Forever sounds perfect, he said. And when they pulled up to their apartment building, lights glowing warm in their windows, Emma's face appearing as she pressed against the glass, watching for them, Victoria squeezed his hand one more time. "Welcome home," she whispered. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Liam felt like he truly was.